Okay, Laura.
Good morning. This is a special meeting of the El Paso City Council for Monday, December 9th, 2019. It is 9:07 a.m. Present are Mayor Margot, Representative Schwarzbein, Representative Anello, Representative Morgan, Representative Salcido, Representative Rivera, and Representative Lizarraga. Mayor Pro Tem Perez is running a few minutes late. On the agenda this morning are the agenda reviews for the City Council meeting and the Mass Transit Department Board meeting for December 10th, 2019. And at the conclusion of this meeting, we will be convening a council work session.
All right, let's begin with 3.1.
Good morning, Monica Lambragna, Chief Operations and Transportation Officer. This is a resolution to authorize the city manager to take all action necessary for the planning, coordination, and execution of the Mexico-U.S. Sister Cities Summit to be held here in El Paso, February the 26th through the 28th of 2020.
Okay, are we going to have this outsourced, or are we going to have it handled internally?
At this point, we included everything, so to utilize city resources and staff, as well as to outsource if needed. We're just looking at that. Speaking from having coordinated, these types of things in the past, it does take a lot of time. I mean, when we did the smart airports, we had a year to plan. This is only giving us until, a couple of months. So that's why we're just worded it that way, so that we could look at everything if needed.
If we outsource anything, which means spending more money, are we going to bring that to council for approval?
Yes, definitely. It would have to be, especially if it was over, the 50,000, but yeah, it would come back to council.
Okay, I just want to make sure we
Yes,
don't
sir.
do anything spending money on this program till we've approved it.
Understood.
Okay. Any other questions? 4.1?
Mayor, I just want to on the last item, we're evaluating options right now. So once we've got that solidified on what approach we want to take with it, then we'll bring it back to the city council.
Yes.
Is the approval of the 50,000 in this agenda item? Or has that already been approved?
No, this is anything that would go over the administrative authority of the city manager would come back to the city council.
Sure. So looking at the backup, again, it's just the one pager. There's no information here on expenditures, on the 50,000 authorization. This goes back to the issue with our backup. There's actually no documentation at all about the expenditures of funds. So just, again, looking forward, I know we have this conversation every single week. Let's actually look at the backup and what's in there and the information that's provided.
If I may, Representative Anello, it's because there isn't anything. This is just a resolution authorizing the city manager. We'll bring anything back in terms of expenditures back to city council for you.
Sure, but I also think that's a conversation, right? Because we're approving a resolution to do this. We should know that there's going to be some financial costs ahead of time before approving a resolution, right? We're getting half of the information, and later we'll get a spreadsheet of funds. So I just ask that be upfront.
I just want to reiterate, anything related to this, which is, I think, piggybacking what Representative Anello said, that it comes to us for approval. Okay?
Understood.
Period. Whatever amount.
We will do that, but I will tell you now, if there's no funds are going to be expended for this program, then we should just cancel the whole program now. Because there's going to be funds needed to do the program.
Well, and I completely understand that. I would just like to see what some of those are going to be in the forefront. Because actually, if you look at this backup, you wouldn't think that at all, right? There's absolutely no transparency when it comes to that. And sure, we should all assume that, but you should also remember that these agenda items in the backup are also for the public.
I don't understand the point, because Monica already stated that the resolution speaks for itself. That is the backup. And if any items come forward for expenditures, they will be in the noted backup. If there's any items where there's not backup, I'd like to know about it from council. I know that I've provided a report before of all the items that do have backup. All of them do have backup. I think some of them, in some cases, depending on who's asking for it and what the background is on the subject, sometimes staff, the departments don't get it there on time from time to time with respect to the Thursday deadline, but the backup is always there.
This is not an either-or right here. All we're requesting is my perspective that staff is capable of handling it. Before we go and outsource, I want to see where it's going and how much money we're talking about. That's all I'm saying, okay? Item 4.1.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Item 4.1, Fire Chief Mario D'Agostino, sorry. 4.1 is a mutual aid agreement with Fort Bliss, and this is for training and response. So it's a renewal of our agreement that we already have. This one's set up on a 9-year term with annual and 3-year revisions to it. We currently do respond with Fort Bliss. We split our responses on Loop 375, so whichever unit's closer out there on the far outskirts of town will take those runs. Item 4.2 is a 2020 Border Zone Fire Department grant, and that is for $249,838, and that's for our water rescue team. There'll be no match funds needed for this one. This is just the application process at this time.
Have we had this before?
The mutual aid agreement, 4.1, yes, sir. 4.2, no, I don't believe
Yeah.
we've received one of these
Okay,
grants.
good. All right, any questions? 5.1,
Good morning, Nelson Ortiz with Planning and Inspections. 5.1 is a resolution for a development agreement between the city and GFA Limited Partnership for a 4.77 acre park located just outside of the city limits. The City Plan Commission did recommend approval of this item on June 13, 2019, and staff is also recommending approval.
any questions? Representative Hernandez?
As it relates to the ETJ, why do we need to authorize it? Is it because we're annexing, or has it already been annexed?
So the property is, again, in the county. At the moment, we are not contemplating an annexation. I don't believe that the applicant is coming in with an annexation either. The reason why we are going through this agreement is because they are developing the property as part of the Gateway Estates land study. And as part of that land study, the applicant is required to dedicate parkland because they're within the path of annexation.
Okay, I understand, but because it's in the ETJ, we have to give approval for them to build out in the county, and they do have to pay annexation fees.
They have to
Or
dedicate.
park fees, I'm sorry, park
Yes,
fees,
exactly.
okay. I understand, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, let's go to the ordinances. 10.1.
Good morning, Terry Sharp, Department of Aviation. Item 10.1 is a first reading, amending Title 14 for aircrafts and airport. It brings Title 14 in alignment with current and state and federal regulations, brings the document in alignment with new technologies in our environment, documents operational practices not formally codified, simplifies fees and permitting practice, and makes administrative and minor references throughout the document.
Any questions? 11.1.
Raul Garcia, Planning Inspections. 11.1 is the first reading of an ordinance granting a special permit to allow for a ballroom in a C3 zone property. This is for 6456 Donovan. The staff did receive one phone call in support. City Plan Commission recommended unanimous approval.
Questions? 11.2.
11.2 is the first reading of an ordinance granting a special permit for off-street parking spaces serving another property and to allow for a 100% parking reduction. This is for two properties, one at 3000 Douglas, the other at 3011 Pershing. This would permit the expansion of a restaurant bar. There was one letter in opposition, and City Plan Commission did recommend unanimous approval.
Questions?
Raul, how many notices were sent out?
I can get you the exact number, but it was all property owners within 300 feet.
Within 300 feet, and you only received one letter of opposition?
Yes, ma'am.
Was the neighborhood association and the business association contacted?
Yes, that's a requirement.
I would like to discuss having a public meeting about this before the second hearing, if possible. Great, thank you very much.
Yes.
11.3.
11.3 is rezoning to A3. This is for property at 10405 Dyer. This would permit a new charter school. No opposition. CPC recommended unanimous approval.
Questions? 12.1,
Morning, Sam Rodriguez, City Engineer. 12.1 is an amendment to Title 15. Title 15, this formalizes the franchise fee for El Paso Water. It also provides for an additional almost $3 million to be dedicated for street maintenance. We do have a work session item scheduled that will provide more information on this item.
okay.
Work session that will follow this meeting will provide you more information on this amendment.
Okay. 13.1,
Good morning, Claudia Garcia with Purchasing and Strategic Sourcing Department. This item addresses strategic goal number 7, enhance and sustain El Paso's infrastructure network. This is a best procurement value for automobile fuel unleaded. 18 bids were solicited, 5 local vendors, 32 views online for this solicitation. We received 5 bids, 1 from a local vendor. No protest has been received for this procurement, and we are recommending the approval of a qualified vendors list where the city manager or designee is authorized to assign work to the secondary and tertiary vendors if the primary vendor is not available to provide service. The primary vendor, it is Rio Valley Biofuels LLC. The secondary vendor, it is Brewer Oil Corporation, and the tertiary vendor, it is James River Solutions LLC. The bidders offering the best value bids for this solicitation. We're also recommending that the bid submitted for Fuelity LLC, it is rejected because it was an incomplete bid.
any questions? Okay. 13.2,
Good morning, Franklin Godinez with Purchasing and Strategic Sourcing Department. Item 13.2 relates to strategic goal number 7. This is a low bid procurement for Pelicano Railroad and Con Lighting and Landscape Improvements. There were 88 viewers. 8 bids were received, all from local companies. No protests were received for this award, and we are recommending award to Black Stallion Contractors Incorporated, the lowest responsive and responsible bidder.
how many bidders did you say there were?
4.
How many?
4.
4? Okay, okay. Any questions? All right, 13.3,
Good morning, Art Gamboa with the Purchasing and Strategic Sourcing Department. This item also relates to strategic goal number 7. This is a best value contract for grounds maintenance, city facilities. 35 bidders were solicited, 31 being local vendors. 4 bids were received, 4 being local vendors. 68 total online views. No protest was received for this requirement. We recommend award as indicated to Delta Unlimited LLC, DBA, Delta Pest Control and Lawn Service.
any questions? 14.1,
Yes, 14.1 is the second reading of an ordinance granting a special permit to allow a 74-foot ground-mounted personal wireless service facility, a cell tower. This will be located at 12,000 Montwood, on Montwood High School property. The need for the special permit is the A2 zoning. There's no opposition. City Plan Commission to recommend unanimous approval with a condition to landscape the equipment area.
questions? This is a one-off, right? This isn't the full
Correct.
debate we've been having.
Correct.
Okay. 14.2,
14.2 is also a second reading of an ordinance rezoning property from RF Ranch Farm to RMU Residential Mixed Use for property located north of Montana and east of Loop 375. This would permit a single-family home development. No opposition. CPC recommended unanimous approval.
any questions? 15.1,
Morning again. This is a renewal for the humanitarian relief for migrants. This will authorize the city manager to make have the authority to take actions needed to assist them. I'll also be giving an update as to the stats we have so far. We've had very limited number of stats since July 3rd, but I'll go ahead and give an update at that time.
when are you gonna give the update?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mayor-
Representative Schwartzman, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Is there a way we can get some information about what Ciudad Juarez is doing in terms of the stay in Mexico, the MPP protocol? I think it would be good for the council and the public to know The tens of thousands of migrants are now being kept in Ciudad Juarez and are no longer, your stats aren't going to show it because you're going to show a precipitous drop-off in the amount of migrants that are in this community since May or June, correct?
Since July.
So that's because Ciudad Juarez is now taking the brunt of those with this with this controversial policy of stay in Mexico. So if there's some way to reach out to some of the folks in Juarez to get an understanding of that, I think that would help.
We'll reach out this morning. I don't know if I'll have those stats by tomorrow morning, but if I do, I'll bring them with me.
And is there any collaboration that we have currently with the shelters in Juarez in terms of assisting them?
Not with the Office of Emergency Management or the City of El Paso that I'm aware of.
Okay, because I know that we have worked closely together. We worked closely together August 3rd and not, and it seems that they're carrying they're bearing a lot of the brunt of these responsibilities that our community was stepping up for. And if there's a way to be able to help them, I think that's something that we should pursue.
Yes, sir.
My office gets a weekly update on the number of migrants being held. The last one I had was over 20,000. About 3,000 Mexican. I get the percentages of each country that'll come in. We'll get you that data. Some NGOs, some churches have been taking blankets and other things over there, but they are ill-equipped for it. They don't have the organization for it. They don't have the NGOs for it. So it's not good. Any way you look at it, it's not good. And it's that because of the lack of fortitude in Washington, D.C. to deal with our immigration. So, but I spoke with the Consul General this weekend, and yesterday I was with Mayor Cavada about what we can do to reconvene that meeting that hasn't been held since before August 3rd. You were exactly right. We talked about that, to see what we can do to get back on track, to try to do something for those over there and helping them form some form of NGO or something to assist what they've got. But yes, you're right. It is a humanitarian crisis over there. Things are not good. And I'll tell you, this weather certainly doesn't help things. So you're right on it. But, Olivia's been getting the data. You can get with her. Okay. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
16.1.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Kevin Smith with Planning Inspections. Item 16.1 is an update from a October 29th request from City Council for additional information related to conservation for the Lost Dog area in northwest El Paso.
Okay, so you're going to present something tomorrow?
Yeah, there'll be a presentation.
Okay. 17.1, 70.2 is presentation. I think that's, okay. Representative Hernandez?
May I see a red line of what the changes are specifically for the debt management policy? I see a presentation, but I'd like to see the exact changes on the policy if there are any.
I'll double check, but it should be posted. There's two attachments posted as backup.
Uh-huh.
I'll verify. If it's not, I'll make sure it's posted.
I believe the final version is posted. I don't see a red line on it.
Okay, I'll get it posted. There's only two changes. In section 8.2, we're adding a definition for the net direct debt service. Just for that metric, we wanted to include the definition so that we know exactly how that's being calculated. And then in section 12, it's amending the current maximum debt rate from 35 to 40 cents. Those are the only two changes.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Okay.
Mayor,
Yeah, Representative Schwartzbein?
yeah, just really quick, is there a way I can get a briefing on 17.1 in my office after this?
You can ask your question now. You can answer. You have
I
questions.
just.
That way
I know-
the rest of the council can hear it too.
I know that we get a briefing, we can request a briefing for items. I thought we're still allowed to get briefings about items.
Absolutely, but what we had told council about the agenda items, you have questions, we're happy to answer them because we want to make sure the rest of the council hears the same thing.
Yeah, no, I just would like to get a presentation about it.
Representative Manello?
I actually would like to know about the public meetings that we are required by law to have and when those will be happening.
Representative Anello, this is Carla Newman, City Attorney. There will be a public hearing tomorrow to discuss the purchase of the utility, and you will be having another public meeting on the 17th of December.
So you're using the city council meetings as the required public meetings?
There will be a public meeting, potentially a public meeting if council is ready to make decisions per the PUC order. And then the council still has to decide on the franchise agreement, which is yet to be brought forward.
Okay.
And that will also be a public hearing pursuant to our code.
Are we having any public meetings that aren't during working hours for regular El Pasoans? So we're not gonna have
None
any
that I'm
meetings
aware
in
of,
the
no.
evening when people can go outside of work?
Well, I'll let Carla respond, but I don't believe that, since there's still negotiations and nothing's been decided yet, that we're not discussing
I don't know
current
if
process.
staff or council's aware how many times that we're receiving, and I can only speak for myself, but I've received tremendous amount of people, not just emailing us, but stopping us at different social events, at going to the supermarket, asking about when we're gonna have public meetings, and that they feel that the public completely overwhelmed and that completely not at all informed about what's being proposed. Is anybody else having that reaction?
Yeah,
from
absolutely,
their
and I do agree with
constituents?
Representative Schwartzbein, there does need to be, and I know we had this conversation in executive, and so I'm just echoing what I had said before, there does need to be a public meeting in the evening where people are able to attend, and it's advertised in advance. And again, I said that to this council and executive before, so I'm just echoing those concerns.
Is anybody else from council getting
No.
the?
We agree with you. We're getting the same thing.
Okay, do you want to respond,
Yes,
Ms. Neiman?
so this situation is a little different. Obviously, we are in litigation, as you all know. You are being briefed behind closed doors due to the filings that we have all, that the city of El Paso is participating in, as well as various other interveners. We did notify the public of the website where they have the ability to read and download all the information that the parties have filed in regards to the filing. However, I would not recommend that we have public hearings, because a lot of the conversations that are taking place, many of the conversations that are taking place are as a result of litigation, and we have no authority to speak as to those items in open session. The item that will be brought forward at some point in the near future will be whether council will need to decide, when council will need to decide on the request from El Paso Electric for the assignment of the franchise agreement. And that will be coming forth in the next couple of weeks, if not in the early new year.
Representative Hernandez?
I have two questions, but I just wanted to address Mrs. Neiman's comment. I hear what your concern is, and I'm not sure if you've ever attended a TCEQ hearing. Essentially, what you do is you post a meeting, and you give an opportunity for members to come and speak and to talk about what they'd like to see. We have not had an actual agenda item on it. I'm not sure, given the time frame, if we have an opportunity to do one maybe in the evening, but I've attended multiple of them, and there'll be TCEQ members. They'll say, here's the proposed or the recommendation, and you give everyone a voice to speak on the issue. And so the majority of the time, people are just talking about what they like to see and what their concerns are. So there are ways that we can put together a meeting so that you're not giving sensitive information or negotiated information, and you give what is already public, and we let the public talk about what they want to hear or what they want to see. So that's just a recommendation, because I do hear that every day, and I think there's a way that we can appease the public by giving them a voice in this issue. My question is related to the presentation that will be given. Is it tomorrow for 17 point?
Yes, 17.1.
Okay. The only request that I have is, as part of the debt models, I understand that a part of the purchase price that there's already existing debt and existing real estate, correct?
Correct.
So do we carve that out as part of a purchase, a potential purchase in terms of this model? Because I don't think that it would be a purchase. I think it would be an assumption of debt, correct?
So all of that, I don't want to go through the entire presentation now. I can if you like, but essentially where that would be addressed would be during the feasibility study.
Okay.
Because that would be part of the valuation process. That would be a part of determining whether or not you're only going to pay for the acquisition cost, or if you're going to take the acquisition cost, essentially purchase all of their debt, refinance it in order to generate some debt service savings.
I hear you. I just think it's a little inflated, the number. And so if there's a way to take out at least whatever the purchase price would be versus the debt, I think we have those numbers today. And I'm telling you this now so that if there is an opportunity to have this information by tomorrow, I'd like to see that.
Well, we're not going to have that information tomorrow because the slide that I have on that is just a sample, and it's based on the current $4.3 billion offer that's on the table. In order to generate, or in order to go through the process, you need a feasibility study because, one, you need to go through, one, what are all the value assets worth, the valuation process. That's a very, very lengthy process that you need to go through because you're determining the value of not only all of the real estate, all of the assets, but the ongoing business concern. There's a lot of work that needs to go into determining what the actual value is of the company that you're going to offer.
Correct.
Because
Okay.
we're not using, or we wouldn't be able to use.
And I'm
Carmen's
sorry,
got-
I didn't want to go into detail. I just wanted to let you know where I'm going in terms of the type of questions I'm going to have. I understand that a feasibility is probably going to give us the most conservative amount, but the number that we have here is just, it's a huge balloon, so the numbers I think are going to be very misleading. And so if we can get that as close as possible to the purchase price, that's my ask. And so if we do have any information that's been afforded to us through the negotiation process, if we can have that here.
Well, so I'll tell Carla to stop me if I say too much, but I would say that based on the legal points that are in the presentation, that you couldn't use condemnation or eminent domain to acquire not only the assets, but all the ongoing business. There's currently a competitive offer on the table. So the city, if the city wished to go down the road of trying to acquire El Paso Electric, would essentially to make an offer as competitive as what's on the table now, which is why I use the $4.3 billion, which still doesn't match the entire offer that's currently being proposed as part of the agreement. So to say that it's overinflated, I would tend to disagree. I mean, I think that it's based on currently what's out there and what's being discussed. It's, again, and it's not to represent, the presentation is not to represent and give definitive answers on here's how much it would cost, here's what that's not what the intent of the presentation is. The intent of the presentation is to talk about what are some of the benefits, what are some of the challenges, what the process will look like, and then finally providing you all some information as to what current municipal electric utilities look like. I mean, so that's really what the intent of the presentation is. That's what you all asked for. If you want more detailed financial analysis, as I mentioned, that would have to be done through a feasibility study, which again would have to be done probably through an expert consultant, which would require a lot of time and a lot of money.
Okay, thank you. And the second thing that the biggest question I've been getting, and this might be for you, Mrs. Neiman and Mr. Gonzalez, is what authority council has, what overall our as a governing body, what authority do we have in terms of a purchase, and what authority do we have in terms of a municipalization? And so I see the kind of the hot points is here's the process, here are the challenges, here are the benefits, but what authority does this council have in general? And so if we can somehow bring that into the presentation, I'd appreciate it.
Representative Vanello?
Thank you, Robert. I kind of wanted to address the conversation about the feasibility study, because looking at the presentation, you just list that there would be a feasibility study. This, again, is something that I had brought up in executive, and I was hoping to have a little bit more detail. How does the city go about doing a feasibility study? What is the estimated cost of a feasibility study? Would we have to go out for an RFQ for that? Are there companies that have been used before for such things? I know that I found some things on the internet about that. I can share it with you today. You've done a lot of it, I imagine. Yeah, so I would just like to see a lot of that. I know it's a little late to update the presentation, but I would like to have an extensive conversation about it, because listing it here as an option, we've had that conversation, we're well aware of it. I just want to really get down into the details of a feasibility study. Thank you.
We would have to go through the procurement process because it would cost more than $50,000 more than likely to get this done, and would require months and months of work. I've got 8 to 10 examples of feasibility studies that are available online through just doing a simple Google research. You can download. There's lots of companies that do the service, but again, I think one of the things that's unique, and so I'll point this out, one of the things that you'll see in the presentation tomorrow is the difference between current electric or municipal electric utilities and what you all are facing. Most municipal electric utilities are very, very small in size. Population in these cities are typically under 50,000, and the acquisition costs are around $50 million. much, much larger scale you're facing here. So that feasibility study
It's
is
gonna
going
be
to
different.
require a lot of work and a lot of expertise in determining what the rate structure looks like, what the operating cost looks like, what your electric rate structure looks like. There'd be a lot of work involved in determining all of those factors.
Sure, and again, as I said earlier, right, a lot of our backup information in our presentations are not just for us, they're for the public. So if we could just throw a slide together to have that available for the public, I would really appreciate it.
To
To just
outline
look
what
at,
exact-
right, look at examples, talk about things like the size of our, well, I know that's in there, the size of our city versus others, but look at examples of feasibility studies, of costs of that, what the feasibility study does. Because again, you just have a feasibility study listed, you don't have any details to that.
Well, and again, that would be council's direction. If that's something you wanted to do and explore, then that would obviously come from the council to say, direct the city manager to go out and do a feasibility study. We'd go through the procurement process and get that process started.
Sure, and sorry, maybe I'm not being clear. I think that we need to have more of a discussion of what a feasibility cost looks like and what comes out of a feasibility, and I think we need to do that tomorrow with visual information for the public.
So as I mentioned, though, not every city is exactly the same. As I mentioned, a lot of the feasibility studies that have been done are for very, very small utilities. I can't use that cost and say, well, this city spent 50,000 on a feasibility study, but that population of that city is 30,000 people. And the electric output that's being generated in that city is much smaller than what we're facing here. There's obviously a lot more components, a lot more assets. There's a lot more work that's going to be involved in doing a feasibility study for El Paso compared to a lot of these other smaller cities. So to say,
Sure, and so I
you
guess
want
what
an
my
estimate-
frustration is about a month ago, we had this conversation, and we even said that I was hoping by the meeting tomorrow, we would actually have information. We would have an idea of how much it would cost, we would have an idea of what the process would be. So to say right now that it's really hard to get that number based on what has been done in smaller cities is a little frustrating, because we asked you to have that. Right, we asked you to go forward and look at that and have some kind of idea. So I understand if you can't get that by tomorrow, but I would like to see something.
I'm not sure that number's attainable right now, given where we are.
Well, not
You
only
have
that,
two-
not
you have-
only, not only that, in defense of Robert, what was stated in executive session is exactly what we have and presenting to you. So to state that y'all had asked for specific items is not accurate. And I don't think that, staff gets up and they put the presentation together, they put exactly together what y'all asked for. If you want additional things, we will take direction from the council.
And
Well-
I remember the conversation is like, please don't just list that this is an option, and that's what's here. It is
And we're
just
not-
listed that
Yes, ma'am.
feasibility study
Yes,
is an
ma'am.
option.
Yes, ma'am, you're correct, and we're not. We're also including what we think the proposed cost would be, and we're not adding additional costs, because he's right. We didn't add over and above the amount of what's on the table because of the lack of the ability to have eminent domain. So we have that information on there and giving you an idea of what it would cost. In terms of overstepping, we didn't want to overstep what the council asked us to do. If you want us to do additional work, if you want us to spend additional dollars, we will do so. But because of the timing of this, and because of the impending purchase, again, we didn't go out and start having this dialogue, having this conversation. Someone came in and the board of directors for the electric utility agreed to make this sale. So in terms of working with the PUC and working on the new franchise agreement, we have done that. If the purchase is something that the council wants to enter into after getting this additional information tomorrow, we can do that. We can present today also, because there's a lot of questions that you're asking that are found in the presentation right now. And if you have questions, she's saying we can present or can't present, but you're asking a lot of questions that are in the presentation.
Representative Schwartzbein.
Thanks, Mayor. Just in terms of referencing what Representative Hernandez has, I know that 4.3 is what IIF has agreed to pay for the utility, for whatever valuation they have to decide that, and that's really an agreement they made with the board of directors of El Paso Electric. There has to be some number from a previous annual report or some sort of public document that can show what the valuation was before IIF decided to pay $4.3 million, correct?
Billion.
What?
4.3 billion.
4.3 billion.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
Did I say million or say billion?
I heard you say million.
I'm so sorry for saying million. Billion. Is there a number there that can be referenced in terms of the presentation? I'm sure there can be some calculation that can be figured out. I think that's what Representative Hernandez was sort of pointing to, is that 4.3 billion seems to be an awful lot of amount that nobody clearly understands how IIF came to that valuation.
Well, They were a publicly traded stock. That's the value at the market level.
So
That is the value at the market.
But
So what
Mr.
does that
Schwartzbein,
mean?
we're not debating that with the council, absolutely not. You know, we're simply talking about what's on the table and by law, what we can or cannot do, that's all. We're not debating that with council. Maybe it's worth that, maybe it's not. I think that y'all have a good point there. Those are good questions that are being raised. However, because we are where we are right now, we've had no impact on that proposed offer. That was done between the electric board and this company. So I agree with y'all to question that number. Those are great questions. We don't disagree with that at all.
Yes,
We're just simply talking about what we have to deal with at this point.
What I'm saying is that if this were not to go through, that $4.3 billion valuation would not necessarily remain for El Paso Electric if there was a future municipalization agreement, correct?
We don't know that.
We don't know
Because, I
that.
mean, it's like if you had an offer on a house for X amount, and then you're thinking you're gonna get a deal on it and offer lower to purchase it. I don't know. I mean,
I know.
this is
I
an
guess-
electric utility, and it's publicly traded, and so they got the offer based on whatever variable they looked at.
I guess what I'm saying is I think it would be a more accurate portrayal to the public to go and look at a valuation at what IIF is paying, and then the most recent public valuation of El Paso Electric.
And as I mentioned, that would be done in a feasibility study, because not only are you
Do
evaluating,
we know
not
the
only are you
number,
valuing,
what it was publicly, what the public valuation?
because not only are you valuing the assets, but you're valuing,
So is there a way that we can
there's not a
request for
number
that?
that I'd be comfortable sharing.
But you can look at their 10K, which gives their net asset value.
Well,
And
and so that goes back what Representative Hernandez said, because when you look at the 10K, you're looking at 2.3 billion. But now you have they're buying it for 4.2, which includes the debt. So where the confusion is the debt actually money that's put into the sale, or is that just rolling over to the 2.3? And that's a conversation I think we need to have tomorrow, because I'm confused about it. It seems like the representatives up here are confused about it, and we're getting a lot of questions.
Okay, so I'm gonna have Carla chime in, but I think it's two separate issues. So one is about the actual deal with IIF and the El Paso Electric Utility. That's not what this item is. The item on the agenda tomorrow is to go through the presentation on what you all asked for, the municipalization of the El Paso Electric Utility.
We need to understand the price of it, and I think understanding where the 4.2 billion versus the 2.3 is coming from.
The 4.3 is based on the current IAF. I think if there's questions that you all have in regards to the IAF deal, then I think we need to have those in executive session with our city attorney.
No, the question is about the value of the company.
Yeah, can we see for tomorrow's presentation a valuation if it was municipalized at $2.3 billion valuation?
do you realize how they came up with the 4.3?
No, that's what we've asked.
It's a premium over their stock price. It's a premium over their stock price, okay? All right? For those of you who have, if you've ever dealt in mergers and acquisitions, there are two ways you purchase a business. You have an asset purchase or a going concern purchase. An asset purchase is without the ongoing items and liabilities. A going concern purchase, which I imagine the PUC would require, assumes all liabilities at the same time. So that's what you've got here. You have a going concern purchase, the complete entity with all assets and liabilities. That's the way it works. There are only two ways to purchase a business.
So I think this question has been asked at another point. As a municipality, are we exempt from having to pay those things over?
To pay what?
To pay, I mean, you're talking about the stock value, the debt, things like that. I mean, that's why the question is, what is our ability as a municipality, right?
So again, I would go back to what I originally said, in that there's currently an offer that IAF has made to buy the electric utility for $4.3 billion. Based on the legal research that's been done, the city cannot use eminent domain to acquire all of the real estate, all of the assets in the ongoing business concern. Therefore, in order for the El Paso Electric Board to accept another offer, it would have to be a competitive offer better than what's currently on the table.
Yes.
Unless the sale doesn't go through and the price goes down, which is why we're having this conversation. If the sale does not go through, the price goes down. That's why we're here. It's why we asked to have this item.
And as I mentioned, that would all be done through the feasibility study to determine what the value is of the company.
And just for the record, the market cap on publicly trading right now, the market cap for electric utility is 2.74 billion.
If I may, can I think we have enough information from council on what needs to be discussed tomorrow. Can we please move on from the item? It's posted for discussion tomorrow, and we need to have the public have the opportunity to come forward and speak to this item as well tomorrow.
Okay, we're done on this one. All right, are we, do we adjourn this one and go into the mass transit, or we continue?
Mayor, we do have a member of the audience that signed up to speak, if you would like her to speak now.
Okay, that's fine.
And we have Ms. Susan Austin, which signed up to speak on EX1. Good morning, Ms. Austin. You'll have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor Margot, council members. I am with Isleta Independent School District. We are one of the interveners in the Public Utility Commission case. We are one of 14 different public sector interveners who have individually intervened in that case. We are called the Rate 41 group because we are all governed by Rate 41, which is a specific rate that has been applicable to public sector entities, including the county, the school districts, Region 19, the Housing Authority, and it's been in place in one form or another since 1946 when this franchise was granted at that time. So we have been there in place. We are financially affected by rate cases. We have intervened in the last 2 rate cases. And so what happens to El Paso Electric is very important to us because we are one of the largest rate-paying groups after certain other segments of the population. We are urging you to have your city manager involve us in meaningful settlement discussions along with the city regarding this transaction. We don't have, at this point, a position on municipalization, but what we do have is the same concerns that you filed. We filed the same types of testimony that you filed about the risks of this sale and about the very nominal upside benefits of the sale beyond the status quo. And so it is important for us to be involved in these discussions. One, we think that we can provide you another public sector perspective on the pros and cons of this sale. We think we have raised all the same objections that you have, and possibly if we can settle with them to include the ring fencing measures, that may give you some time to do the other things that you have to do before you actually approve the settlement along with the assignment of the transfer. I don't know what good it does you to settle before you have nailed down whether you can assign the transfer or sign the franchise or not. If you do involve us, that gets you a broad-based settlement with more measurable, tangible, locked-in benefits. The only thing beyond the status quo, according to the testimony that your experts and our experts have already provided, is really the $100 million stability fund. That is outside the ring fencing, and so it is at risk over 20 years. If we can settle, then you will have demonstrated tangible benefits that lock in the Rate 41 benefits to this community.
Ms. Austin, you've reached the 3 minutes, ma'am. Thank you.
I have a
Mayor, I'd
question
like to
for
hear
Ms.
more.
Austin.
What?
I'd like to hear more.
How much longer do you have, Susan?
I'm just wrapping up, sir.
Motion to
Okay, go
suspend the
ahead.
rules.
Second.
We said go ahead.
Therefore, we
Some
represent,
question.
again, we represent 14 separate entities. If you want to go in front of the PUC and ask for more time, talk to your lawyers about whether you can do that. I don't think you lose any ground by not coming up with, yes, we agree to a settlement next week, but you can ask your lawyers about that. We're not ready to settle, but we think we can get ready to settle if it involves you guys. So we would like you to instruct your city manager to involve the Rate 41 group in a meaningful way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ma'am, and before your time, you asked to extend your time, you were talking about the 100 million. Could you repeat that again, please?
The 100 million, there's not a lot in either the proposal or in some of the discussed settlement terms about what will happen to that 100 million. That 100 million was part of the offer, whether you settle or not. It was part of the offer. But it is to come from outside the money of El Paso Electric. The ring fencing is designed as a way to keep, in your own expert testimony, is that it keeps the El Paso Electric assets safe if there's a bankruptcy at the IIF level. It keeps these, but at the same time, that means that the IIF people are the ones that are somehow finding and pushing to you the 100 million over 20 years. And I'm saying, that's just a promise. That's just an unsecured promise. I don't know how that's gonna get locked in. But if there is a lock-in on the preservation of the Rate 41 group, that's over $2 million a year that could get locked in and would provide an extra reassurance of tangible dollar benefit to the community over the long term.
Thank you.
Just for a clarification for the council and for the public who's watching, that 100 million is for their entire service area. 80 million is only allocated for the city of El Paso. And it was allocated for economic development. And it was for a period of over 20 years, of which we negotiated, and I don't know where, we're not privileged to, what's that? We can't speak to the specifics of it, but I will say that you as a council, the staff, what we've executed based on your policy is the incentives that we've given, the 300+ agreements that have been put in place. There's $250 million where all the Rate 41 participants are going to benefit from the economic development projects that are already in place. So if those dollars, that 80 of the 100, is utilized in order for us to incentivize or bring in more types of businesses that then help the Rate 41 participants, then again, it only stands to reason if we have more tools, we're able to increase the return to them and the savings to them.
Just for clarification, City Manager, the 80 million is for Texas, not just El Paso, correct? They also service Hudspeth County.
You're correct.
Okay,
You're
I just
correct.
wanted to be clear
You're
on
correct.
that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have we not, sorry, Mayor.
Reverend Schwartzbein.
Have we not had dialogue with Rate 41 during this?
There has,
So
Please.
Let the city attorney
Rate
handle it.
41 is an intervener in the lawsuit. So
Yeah.
they have been privy to all the negotiations, and then their lawyers and their representatives have been part of the negotiations with IAF and El Paso Electric. So they're part of the lawsuit.
And then you suggested that we look to postpone this to where there's a better settlement. Do you have an idea? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I know that when we have met with some of the representatives on council, the questions have been, what's the impact if we don't approve the settlement? There was some sort of fear that if you don't agree to a settlement right now, then that automatically puts you at risk of the PUC forcing something on you.
Yeah.
And our position is that, one, it doesn't force even a January trial date. If you guys asked for an extension, it is our understanding that the PUC has the ability to push out everything by 60 days. And so obviously they will set a trial date, but I think they will set it for later. So we think it will give you more time. But two, I don't understand how you can possibly settle without knowing whether you're assigning the franchise or not.
Is there an ability to ask for an extension for 60 days, City Attorney?
I'm not certain. I was told that they have, the statutory deadline is 180 days from when they filed the case, and then the PUC has authority to extend it 60 days to make a decision on the case. So at some point, the PUC has to have a trial.
Is that something we can request, so we can request the PUC to have
We
an
would need to
extension?
ask Norman tomorrow. We would ask Norman Gordon, if that's possible.
So that's something this council can ask to extend?
We would have to take action on the actual agenda item, which is for tomorrow, correct?
We will discuss additional issues that council has to consider tomorrow during executive.
Because it seems that even if we were to approve or deny the settlement by the 17th, there's still a number of interveners that would still need to find a settlement as well.
As was discussed in the press release a couple of weeks ago, the PUC has issued an order requiring that all the parties make a decision by the 17th. That includes Rate 41 as an intervener.
But we
So-
can request a 60-day extension on behalf of
The 60-day extension, my understanding belongs to the PUC, not to the interveners.
The PUC makes the decision for the 60 days, but I think what the question is can we reach out to them and ask them to exercise
Likely,
their
yes.
authority?
Likely, yes.
All right. Susan, you inferred that you have not been at the table negotiating, and understanding that Rate 41 has been represented in the negotiations. Are you telling me you haven't been?
No, sir. I think we have been, but I think we would like to negotiate as talking.
Are you saying you want to negotiate with the city as opposed to the PUC and as an intervener? Is that what you're trying to?
I think that's an important component.
Well, but the point is, you all have been, as an intervener, negotiating with everyone else and at the same table. Is that not correct?
I can't say we have not been.
You have been, that's what I understand. Okay, thank you.
I have a question for City Attorney. Has there been communication with the other intervener? I guess what I'm saying is there's a seat at the table when everyone is together with the PUC to negotiate. Has there been conversation with the other intervenings about the overall outcome for the communities?
I was present at a meeting in early December where Rate 41's lawyers were in the room. We were all involved in negotiations at that time, and the negotiations have been ongoing with all of the parties.
And that was with the PUC negotiator?
Correct. There has been there's not a negotiator, we have been asked to negotiate. So everybody involved in the litigation has been discussing their various issues with IIF and El Paso Electric, including Rate 41.
And do we feel that these negotiations are being cohesive with all of the interveners as a community, or we are doing it completely separately?
It is one settlement agreement.
Oh, thank you.
And I will say, just for the record, that I have reached out to the superintendents. I didn't connect with them. I did have conversation with Jerry Cichon about this.
Okay, thank you, Susan. All right, where do we go? We end this one and go to the...
For mass transit, agenda review
Just
for
we
mass
continue
transit.
with the mass transit?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go.
Good morning, Council. Jay Benashik from Sun Metro. Item 3 we have is the renewal of Sunland Park contract to provide services. This contract is only going to go till their grant expires, which is going to be in a couple months. And then once that expires, they're going to use another grant with another provider from the South Central Regional Transit District, which is the New Mexico or Las Cruces group. So that's how they'll be provide services once their grant expires.
Okay.
The item 4 is just it's a bid out for when we do our oil changes. We have our oil sampling, and this is just a grant, or I'm sorry, a bid that Chevron will be doing the oil sampling.
Okay.
Item 5 is we're going to go into recommend the naming of the maintenance and storage facility for the streetcar to the Ron Dawson streetcar. Maintenance and storage facility. It was approved by CAC. Representative Swartzbein has been involved with this, and we know that the daughter of Ron Dawson will be here tomorrow for this.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you very much, Jay. I know that they're very excited.
Yeah, they are. So.
Okay. All right.
And last item would be, it's just an update of our Title VI program, a federal program that assures that we take precautions to make sure that we don't do anything that's discriminatory to race or color for any of our programs, and it's an update we have to do every 3 years, and this is an update we'll have to file with the FTA.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
All right.
May we have a motion to adjourn? There's a motion and a second to adjourn the agenda review meeting. All in favor? Anyone opposed? And the agenda review meeting for Monday, December 9th, 2019 is adjourned at 10:01 a.m. Mayor, would you like to start the work session?
Let's start the work session.
Okay, good morning. This is a work session of the El Paso City Council for Monday, December 9th, 2019. It is 10:01 a.m. Present are Mayor Margot, Representative Hernandez, Representative Morgan, Representative Salcido, Mayor Pro Tem Perez, Representative Rivera, and Representative Lizarraga. The first item on the agenda today is the notation of the formal report of the Financial Oversight and Audit Committee meeting held on November 19th, 2019.
Good morning, City Council. Edmundo Calderon, Chief Internal Auditor for the City of El Paso. Just wanted to get it into the record that the Financial and Oversight Audit Committee met on November 19th, 2019. We discussed 5 items. One was discussion action on the revision to the city's debt policy. The second thing we talked about was the discussion on the audit updates that we had already completed by the Internal Audit Office. And third, we had a discussion action on the City of El Paso's internal audit charter. We had an update to our charter for some additional duties we've assumed. And 4, we had discussion action on the fiscal year 2020 annual internal audit plan that was approved by the committee. And finally, we talked about the results of our client surveys.
Okay. What's that? Did we finish the rest of the agenda? Yeah. We're going over those tomorrow. Those are presentations for tomorrow. Any questions on the audit committee? Okay, thank you
very much.
Item number 2 on the agenda is presentation and discussion on the use and impact of city streets by the El Paso Water Utilities and franchise fee.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Sam Rodriguez, City Engineer. The presentation today is going to cover the proposed amendment to Title 15. Title 15 will cover 2 things. One, it will formalize the current franchise fee that the city is already collecting through the budget resolution. It will formalize it under Title 15, as well as provide an option to council to increase the amount and dedicate that to street resurfacing as part of our street maintenance program. We were doing a continuation of the presentation that I had 2 weeks ago, where I provided a very detailed presentation on the streets and talked about what the permanent or ongoing solutions that are out there and available for council to consider to come up with street maintenance funds to continue to keep up with our inventory. So the presentation today will cover a summary of what we have funded through today, as well as talk about the PCI study. This is a presentation that you have seen before when we talk about the need for our community and the amount of inventory that we have with our pavement condition index information. And then talk about specifically about the franchise fee and where these additional dollars could be allocated for our streets. Table provides a summary of the allocated funds over the past 10 years, starting with the 2012 Street CIP program, where they looked at, we provided funding for various sources. It was $128 million for reconstruction, of which $21.8 million was then reallocated for arterial resurfacing. That was the top 25 arterial program. 2017 capital plan included $13.3 million. That was mainly for traffic signals. 2018 capital plan included 5 critical roads like Hawkins, Railroad, and Schuster. And then 2019 included $64 million that's allocated for street lighting on the top 25 arterials, as well as landscaping. You'll be taking action tomorrow to approve a contract out of that program, and another one is on the way as well.
Before you leave this slide, just wanted to add for the council and for public's sake, the $218 million for street CIP, a portion of that was being utilized for MPO match funding, and so we stopped that practice, and so the additional dollars, the 13, the 45, the 64, embedded within those dollars are still matching dollars for MPO, unless you have it on a separate list, Sam.
No, they are within those dollars, correct.
So just to make that point, so the public knows, the council is reminded that a portion of these dollars are used to leverage additional state and federal dollars.
And then the last item on this table is the dedicated $7 million that was approved by City Council as part of the 2019 annual operating budget to residential streets, and we've executed that program. We approved a 2-year program for fiscal years 19 and 20 about a year ago, and so we've completed 19 and we're in the process of 20 that's under contract, and that's an annual dedicated fund that's also included in fiscal year 20. So why are we here today? Streets maintenance continues to be a high priority for our community. We have over 2,500 centerline miles of roadway. And as I mentioned before, we're continuing to accept new subdivisions into our city, into as part of our development, so that inventory continues to grow. I'll be sharing with you the PCI information that shows a need of $44 million a year just to keep our PCI, our pavement condition index, at a 70 or above on a yearly basis. And then going back to the July 2019 presentation, where City Council asked us to continue to work and look for options to include possibly a bond election next year for reconstruction of roadways, as well as, again, we talked about that 2 weeks ago when I provided a detailed presentation to City Council. We also wanted to note, when you look at resurfacing of streets, because when you resurface a street, you basically extend the life anywhere between 10 and 15 years. It's not an ongoing permanent solution. And so we really want to recommend and want to continue the discussions of providing ongoing dollars to resurface roads and really focus the borrowing of dollars for the reconstruction of the big dollar amounts on the roadways. PCI, Pavement Condition Index, we completed this study back in 2018 where we hired a company to go through and drive every single roadway in our city. It was done through video analytics, and they analyzed all the cracks, the settlements, and they provided basically a pavement condition index for each of the roadways. That data is then utilized for us is to prioritize roadways, to put programs together and recommendations to council that's based on data, that's based on not just the raw data that we get from the system, but then we also look at neighborhoods, we also look at travel data, we also look at accidents to make sure that we're providing a comprehensive recommendation to council as we look to allocate the limited amount of resources. This data is required to be updated anywhere from 3 to 5 years, so we're looking at options to work with UTEP, to work with some various companies to continue to make sure that we have the data current as we put programs together for your consideration. The results of that data, these are the averages for our city. About 50% of our roadway is at satisfactory or higher. That's a 70 or above. 50% of that is fair or poor. We do anticipate when we design new roadways, we design them to a 25-year roadway life cycle. We try to, or at least is recommended that 4% of our roadway system be maintained on a yearly basis. And we really set the average of 70 and above as our community goal. Anything higher, in my opinion, we already have very amount of limited resources, and to try to shoot for something higher, which is not be feasible, in my opinion. We also wanted to really start as we start to identify new funding resources to really start spending dollars to keep good roadways good. And so a lot of the concerns that we hear from the community through the CR request or through the public really are roads that are really bad condition on the reconstruction of roadways. But if we neglect to keep the good roadways in good condition, then those roads are going to basically deteriorate to the point that become reconstruction candidates and make it more expensive to maintain in the future. We also have to, again, as we talked about 2 weeks ago, we need to make sure that we have a plan to address the reconstruction of roadways, and we're going to continue to work on that and bring options to council in the future. This is a very good graph that kind of shows you the life cycle of a roadway. As you build a new roadway, the pavement starts to deteriorate. It deteriorates at a very slow rate in the beginning because it's got good oil content. It gets to a point where you want to start to seal the cracks, do a chip seal or a crack seals and whatnot that keeps it in good condition. It prevents the water from penetrating into the sublayers of the roadway. Then, if you let it continue, you don't address those cracks, those roadways, then it just continues to deteriorate to where it's going to need a reconstruction. Again, the various maintenance activities that we have are crack seals, mill and overlay. In certain cases, we want to do spot repairs where we have failed sections and mill and overlay, and then the full reconstruction. We're working with Richard and Harold and his team to identify somewhere in between there as well where we don't have to do a full reconstruction, perhaps doing a reclaiming type of process that would be more cost effective as well for some of those reconstruction candidates. This is a very good map that shows you a good representation of the data that we have in 2008 for where we had an average PCI for the city of 75.5 based on that data, showing a lot of green, some yellow and red. And then based on the 2018 data that we received, you see the big difference between the two, where you start to see a lot of reds and yellows in our community, still keeping with the newer development out on the fringes of the city in the greener areas.
Sam, for clarification, so 2008 was the last PCI until we did it in 2018?
That's correct. It was
So we had a 10-year law instead of the 3 to 5 that's recommended?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Your Representative Manello?
Sam, genuine thing that I just have never understood. On slide 7, you talk about how streets are graded, right? But so, I went out with streets, looked at a lot of the streets and how they're graded, and it's interesting because like a certain section of the street will, just let's say 1 through 5 for conversation's sake, a certain section, a block will be at a 1, and the next section will be at a 4. So how do you guys come up with the actual grade of a street?
The way the computer analytics does it is it looks at a segment from intersection to intersection. So it does it by actual, like from this street to this street. One block is, it looks at everything that happens in that road and then it weights it. The way the ASTM and how the system was developed through micropaver. It was developed through the Army Corps of Engineers for their pavements, and that's what's been widely accepted throughout their communities in the U.S. It basically rates. It looks at everything that street has, cracks, how wide they are, either longitudinal, cross-sectional, if there's depressions, failures, and then it provides a final score for that segment of the roadway.
And the segments are pretty small.
Segments are street to street. That's what I'm telling you. It's a block section. And so when you look at, when we put the program together and we said we want to target PCI, roads with PCI of 40 to 60 as an example, we get the preliminary data, and then we look at the segments that are really bad condition, what's really bad around there. The data through GIS is very, you can manipulate it very easily to where you can get some really good analytics back to be able to present and give us a good preliminary list off of that. And that's when you look at the type of maintenance opportunities that we have. One of the things that we can do, to your point, is we can do some spot reconstruction in certain areas, because there's certain roadways where you have a very big, like a big area of failure that you need to reconstruct, but then the rest of the street is actually in a condition where you can actually remill and overlay, and so we'll be able to do that, and we've been doing that in certain cases.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you.
So this is the table that gives you an average by district, just for your reference. And then this is the chart that you have seen before, where we've shown a $44 million need for our community just to keep it at a 70, PCI of 70 and above, showing the $7 million that we currently have as well. The PSB franchise fee, infrastructure franchise fee, which is what's presented for you today, and then we're introducing it in an ordinance tomorrow to be able to amend the title for that as well. So this proposed fee is being proposed to be imposed to Paso Water Utilities to compensate for the impact that their operations with their equipment, their trench cuts have on our streets and our pipelines. Currently, we collect $3.55 million. This is done through the budget resolution. So Title 15 amendment will formalize that and make it part of the code. The current funding is obviously going to the general fund, which the general fund also funds the street maintenance operations. We did complete an engineering analysis where we looked at how the streets function as part of the drainage system, and that's how the conversation started with the PSB about how we can use some of those dollars to maintain our roadways. And through discussions with them, their recommendations, we ended up agreeing that we go ahead and proceed with a franchise fee amendment, or a franchise fee that would help us compensate or help contribute to the maintenance of our roadway system. And again, part of the issue that we have is the pavement cuts. If you think of all the issues that really deteriorate our roadways, pavement cuts is one of our bigger culprits. You've seen a lot of pavement trench failures that we have in our roadways that then just expand from there, collecting water and then penetrating the sublayers for our roadway system. And then the $2.96 million that's being proposed as an increase would then be dedicated for street resurfacing. If we look at what we have recently approved for our system, we've targeted our top 25 material, we've targeted our residential, but we really haven't targeted our collector roads. And our collector roads receive a lot of traffic and receive quite a bit of traffic flow in our community, and we really wanted to target these collector roads with these dollars. The additional $2.9 million will bring the total infrastructure fee to $2.75 million, 2.57% of the annual revenue for water and wastewater. It's proposed to be implemented as part of the PSB fiscal year, which will begin March 1st. And then the streets to be resurfaced, again, will be brought forth to council, and we're targeting next week when we do the actual approval, or recommend the actual approval of Title 15, where we present the program to council that would include the allocation of these $2.96 million to collector roads. And that would bring our total annual dedicated funding source for street maintenance up to almost $10 million. Again, far short from the $44 million that we're saying we need, but it's definitely working towards the final solution. Again, the impact fee and what the community and the residents would see, you're looking at a franchise fee of what they see right now. Most bills receive a 77-cent franchise fee is what's reflected in their bills, as most of our residential homes have a 3/4 inch meter, and that's what's would be reflected. With the increase will be an additional 60 cents. That will bring a total franchise fee to $1.37. This is the based on fiscal year 19 revenues, what that projected amount would be. Again, we're already collecting 3.55, and the increase would be $2.96 million. The follow-up items, again, it will be a Title 15 amendment. It's being introduced tomorrow. It would provide for 2.75% franchise fee to PSB, and then we will dedicate approximately $3 million for street resurfacing from those additional dollars. The introduction tomorrow, public hearing will be on the 17th, and then we'll be bringing back to council the proposed program as to which streets will be funded with this additional dollars. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Representative Schwartzbein.
Thank you again, Sam, for this presentation. Thank you for city staff. Just a quick question. When we talk about prioritizing collector roads, can you speak a little bit about what that looks like to you, and also some examples of what are some collector roads for the benefit of the public?
Definitely. So when you think of collector roads, if we're targeting residential already with the $7 million that we have in our current budget. And so those are the residential roads where residents live. So you get to your house and there's really nowhere, there's no through traffic through those roadways. A collector road will be something bigger than that, but not an arterial. So you're looking at some of the roads that really collect all the residential. So for example, on the west side, you're looking at roads like Belvedere, will be a good example. I'm sorry?
Like High Ridge.
High Ridge, for example, like Alabama would be another really good example.
Would Red or Stanton or like Shadow Mountain be considered?
Red, those are all top 25 arterials.
Okay, so those are arterials.
Yeah, so we're looking at when arterials, we targeted the top 25. I know for a fact that Shadow Mountain is part of the 25, so is Red Road, but no, Belvedere is not. And so there's, on the east side, for example, it'd be like South Clanfield will be a very good collector road that will be targeted with some of these dollars. And so those are the kinds of roads that we'll be looking at.
Would you be looking at wanting the entire $9 million a year if proposed towards collectors, or would there be a split between?
No, so it's restricted, Representative. So $7 million will continue to be residential only.
Okay.
The $3 million, additional $3 million will be targeted for collector roads.
Thank you.
Representative Vanello.
Sam, I know you mentioned it at the beginning of this presentation, but can you remind me what the current $3.55 million is spent on?
It's just dedicated to the general fund.
Okay. And what impact would the additional $3 million have on the number of streets? I mean, how many are we currently doing right now at $7 million?
Right now, with the $7 million of roadway, we are doing on a 2-year cycle. We're doing approximately, like the last cycle that you approved, which is 2-year, we did 104 streets. That's what was approved as part of the program, with 32 centerline miles.
And so collectors
on residential.
Okay.
On the collector road, we're targeting about 10 centerline miles for a 2.5-year program. So because we will collect half of fiscal year 20, 21 and 22 is what will be the program that will be coming to you.
So 10 miles a year, and roughly that could be 2 to 3 collectors, correct?
We are Again, yeah, I think we're targeting between 5 and 8 collector roads is what we're targeting, Representative.
All right, thank you.
Could you repeat those numbers again, Sam,
I'm
please?
sorry?
The numbers you just gave? The numbers.
So for the 2-year program on the 7 million, and I'll be happy to send this
How
to
many
you.
streets, yeah.
I'm sorry?
How many streets were there?
We, the city council approved the 2-year for 7 million. It was 104 streets, 32 centerline miles. And just reminder, residential roads are much narrower than the collector roads. And that's the reason you see the difference on centerline miles.
And if you recall, council, when y'all approved that in the budgeting process in the previous year, y'all made it a point, as did we, that we wanted it to go directly to the residential areas because the other approved funds were not specific to that. And a lot of them were taken out whenever we looked at the 218 million. There was a lot of changes based on not being enough money there. So that was the commitment. And so when he said 104 streets over 2 years, it's averaging over 50 streets per year, like we said it would.
Representative Hernandez?
Thank you for the presentation. Once the fee is assessed, is it my assumption correct that it will be done in the form of a budget resolution like we do annually?
No.
Where the dollars go?
This is why we're making it part of the code, Representative. So
Okay.
we're amending Title 15 to have it be as part of the code, and so it'll be an annual allocation that we're going to be getting from the El Paso Water.
But we will be bringing at the next council meeting on the 17th, we're going to bring an amendment to the budget resolution because currently it states, item number 70 states the 3.55 million. What we're going to do is bring that back and amend that to reflect this change. So yes, both items will be mentioned in the budget reso. We'll have the portion that currently comes to the general fund and then the portion that will be dedicated to the streets that Sam's referencing.
And it starts in March, so.
March 1st would be the effective date.
And so when we start the program, once we start to assess a fee, when do you plan on deploying the program?
We're going to be bringing, again, the program of which roads to council. Our target, working with Richard on, is to do it as part of next week when we have the second hearing for the Title 15 amendment. And then once we have that list of streets, we'll be able to start working on it right away. We have some contracts already in place, and then in the process of developing others for the next round of the next 2-year cycle.
And thank you. And what is the total fee increase combined with El Paso water utility fee increases and the City of El Paso franchise fee? Do you know?
I don't know, let's see, PSB, but I do not know what their rate structure, what their proposed budget is. I can tell you from what this increase would be for a typical residential would be 60 cents. Right now they're seeing 77 cents on their bill. It'll go up by 60 cents, so it'll go up to 137.
Okay, but.
That's just the
Yeah,
franchise
that's just
fee.
a franchise fees, but we're gonna see other fees increase about like the stormwater fee, other fees?
No,
Are you
there's no
aware?
increase in stormwater.
Okay, so there is gonna be, a fee increase of the franchise fee, of water rate increase. And so I'd like to know what the total is because it's important for us to make that informed decision because it's the same ratepayer paying the fee. And so I think it's important to note. And then finally, you had mentioned collector roads resurfacing. I'm curious if there's any dollars that are going to be set aside for maintenance or landscape, anything of that nature, because I'm concerned about that. So is that the intent with this fee?
No, the intent, again, the 3.55 that's already being collected is just part of the budget that was approved as part of the general fund. You know, we're targeting that additional increase that really as justification for the impact that El Paso Water is having on our roadways. And
Okay.
that's what we're using to justify that increase, and we want to dedicate those dollars for that $44 million need that we have in our community.
So there's not going to be any MPO matches, no reconstruction costs, fees as part of this?
This $3 million,
Mhm.
we're proposing to dedicate it strictly to street maintenance.
Okay, thank you for repeating it. I just wanted to reaffirm.
And the reason for that, if y'all remember, we briefed y'all on how when you put the drainage fee in place, and I think it was 2006, we're absorbing a lot of those drainage costs, and so this helps curtail some of those costs. It doesn't completely pay for it, but it does help allocate dollars for what we're absorbing. And we've absorbed over, I think it was $12 million in just the last couple of years, yeah.
we've been seeing tremendous improvement in the roadways. I've been hearing a lot of positive remarks, so I think this is a good step in the right direction. I would just like to look at the comprehensive overall increases so I can make an informed decision.
Actually, Robert went upstairs, so we'll interrupt
Okay, that's
between one
fine.
of the meetings.
And I do want to take this opportunity to thank council for their support and for their strong decision-making on doing these kinds of votes that then does go to the actual streets in your residential areas that you hear a lot about. So when you ask us to come up with additional dollars, and the best practice is to do pay as you go, not just put more debt on the city, this is the way that it goes about happening. So thank y'all for making those decisions in the past and the decisions you'll be making going forward.
Representative Schwartzbein, did you have a question?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. So these additional funds would be earmarked towards maintenance, which could include resurfacing, but is more than just resurfacing, correct?
So the 3.55 million that's already collected, that's part of the regular budget that was approved.
Okay.
That's general fund dollars. The additional increase that we're proposing, which is at $2.96 million, is proposed to be dedicated for resurfacing.
Okay, and the 3.55 would then be?
It's part of your general budget allocations on the general fund. Which again, street maintenance is a big part of that as well.
If you remember, that was put in place when I was recommending cuts in the budget 14. The council overrode that recommendation and then put that in place.
Representative
Just as a
Rivera?
reminder.
I was not in council.
Yes, sir. With this increase, are you still going to remain on a 2-year cycle, or is it going to improve it to maybe less than 2 years?
It's, so the program that we're putting together will be for a 2-year cycle on the 7 million. So it will be for fiscal years 21 and 22. And then it will be for 2.5 years on this $3 million for collectors. So it'll be for half of fiscal year 20, which begins March 1st, when they start collecting the additional dollars, and then it will go through 21 and 22. So that's the program that we'll be bringing together. It'll be a two-year program.
Okay, and it's strictly for residential, right?
7 million annual for residential, so it'll be a $14 million pot of money for residential, and it'll be approximately 7.5 for collector that we're working on.
Okay, and so during that would streets like, I know you have the major arterial streets, but also do you carry the ones like for example, Traywood? I'm getting a lot of calls on Traywood, and if you go by, it's a battle zone. Visalso is another one. Do you have something earmarked for streets like that are highly used but not?
That's the collector. That's what I was
That's
trying to
collector? I'm
describe as a
sorry.
collector. So if they didn't make it to the top 25 arterial program, where those are the top 25 that get traveled, then we're looking at what's the next tier, which would be the collector roads that are really highly traveled for folks to get in and out of their homes, to their businesses and work. That's the group that we're trying to target as a collector, because we really haven't had any dedicated dollars for collector roads.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Robert, do you want to do a little postscript here?
Well, I have the El Paso Water proposed budget for FY 2021, so they're showing a proposed increase on a typical residential bill from $60.95 to $63.76, which is a $2.81 increase a month. $2.81 increase a month.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, let's go item number 3.
Item number 3 is presentation and discussion by Medical Center of Americas, MCA, on their annual report.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Nicole Farini, Director of Community and Human Development and Chief Resilience Officer. I'm pleased this morning to be able to welcome Ms. Emma Schwartz, her team, and several partners that will be presenting to you the annual report for the Medical Centers of the Americas Foundation. And I just want to preface by saying that it's so important to, when you take a look at this report and all of the work that the MCA does across the board, that they really have been phenomenal partners to the city of El Paso, not just in terms of economic development, but also in terms of community outreach, community engagement, infrastructure development, and really being a powerful, positive voice for this community on an international stage. And so with that, I would just very much like to welcome to the podium Emma Schwartz, CEO of the Medical Center of the Americas Foundation.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, and, well, he's not here. City Council representatives, City Manager Gonzalez, city staff, thank you very much for this opportunity to present our annual report to the City of El Paso, our 7th annual report. Just a little direction. Do I control the PowerPoint with? Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. So I want to begin by thanking you all so much for your partnership, not just through the funding that we receive with the Impact Fund, but also the partnership that we have with you all as council members and the support that we receive, and most especially with city staff who help us on a lot of different projects. I also want to thank my MCA team and our partners who are here today, because this is most certainly a team effort, not with just our team, but our partners throughout the community. So I want to start, we did submit to you a couple of weeks ago our annual written report to the city. So all of this information you've received more robustly through that report. And I believe that you also have a copy of the PowerPoint here today. So this grid basically summarizes our obligations to the city under the Impact Fund. I am proud that we have completed all of the building components of that contract, which was the majority of that contract, within the time frames allocated. For all the programmatic projects that we have completed the metrics on that were required per that, but we continue to operate on an ongoing basis with those programs. So just this past fall, we completed a strategic planning process with the board and the staff of the Medical Center of the Americas. We do this about every 3 years. So I thought it would be best for me to talk about the strategy that we've employed, talking about the programs that we have and really what we're trying to achieve. But this graphic, which is a little bit small in PowerPoint, shows you what the life cycle is for the life sciences industry, the whole ecosystem that we are trying to grow here in this space. So we're constantly looking at that life sciences ecosystem and the different parts of that to see how can we contribute, how can we make sure that we are operating in all the important areas of life sciences to make sure that we can grow this very complex but very important industry here in our community. So to begin with, why do we do this? Why are we here, and what is this all about? And our mission statement answers that. We're here to develop and catalyze the life sciences ecosystem in this region, and we always think about two really important factors when we're doing that. How does it improve healthcare in our community? That is a bottom line. And how does it create economic opportunity? And we're really fortunate to be working in a space where both of those things are accomplished. And we believe in looking at the uniqueness of our region that we can create a globally competitive life sciences industry here in El Paso. We do, what we do is made under two big umbrellas, our infrastructure projects and our programs. As a wise consultant told us when we really were doing a lot of the business planning for the Cardwell Collaborative, is that real estate projects are very important, but if you don't have robust programs to go into them, you'll end up with failed real estate developments, especially in a new industry that you're trying to attract. So that is how we operate, looking at both of these areas. Under the area of land and building development and property management, this is actually where we spend a lot of time. This is almost a company within a company. We do this to support both the development of the MCA campus and key partner stakeholders on the campus. And we're trying to increase healthcare educational opportunities and state-of-the-art facilities on this campus. But very importantly, it's also our strategy to create economic sustainability for the MCA in the long term, so we can be sure to be an asset for our community for many, many years. But under this umbrella, we do a lot of things. We do robust master planning for the campus. We just completed our 3rd master plan. We acquire land. We're continually doing that. We do environmental remediation. This is an older part of town, and so we spend a significant amount of time working on that. We have to develop infrastructure in this area also that's missing. Roads, gas, sewers, water, wastewater. We're having to upgrade all of that. And then we develop and manage buildings like the Cardwell Collaborative and the VA and 440 Rentals. And we've acquired several properties recently, and so we're beginning to plan for our next building, as well as some parking opportunities on this campus. So each of the following slides you'll see are organized in the same way, where we talk about our accomplishments, our goals, who our partners or competitors are in this area, how we fund it, and then what our impact is on our economic impact, as well as our impact on healthcare. And again, I'm not going to go through each of these slides in painful detail because you've been provided most of this information already. But a couple of highlights, I do want to talk about the Cardwell Collaborative. We are between 75% and 80% building-wide occupancy, which is great. There's some ebb and flow over the year. And we're really excited that this year UT Houston School of Public Health moved into our building as they're trying to expand their presence in our community as really a third university system operating in our community. And I'm excited that they have a lot of visions for growth in El Paso, which gives more educational opportunities to El Pasoans. So that's very exciting. And then the VA Wellness Center, as you can see, if you drive by that area, it's almost complete. We will have certificate of occupancy on December 13th. This says December 5th, but we had a 1-week delay. We are planning our ribbon cutting ceremony for January 28th, and stay tuned for your formal invitations for that. This is a $16 million project, $1 million of which is going to infrastructure to improve the MCA campus, providing two-way streets with the Rosa extension, connecting Revere to Euclid Street, with stormwater ponding, and with environmental remediation. So really important project where it'll bring over 190 new jobs to this campus. So very exciting. And before I move on, I also want to invite Gerald C. Sean here. There he is. He wants to make a couple of comments about the partnerships and the growth of this campus and some of the things that we're trying to do.
Thank you so much. Mayor Margot, Council, I want to thank you for allowing me to stand here. The partnership that we're currently embarking on is at two specific communities. You have one, which is Sun Plaza, which is about $45 million, historic, right behind the McGoffin home, and then Chelsea, which is about another $45 million, which is right off of I-10 in Chelsea. Each one of these is about 340 elderly families. And if you remember Chelsea, that's the one that flooded out when somebody had unfortunately tampered with a sprinkler. And I think you all saw the age of the tenancy, which was about 85 years old on average, 83 years old. 1/3 of them are non-ambulatory. Okay, so they move around in wheelchairs or in gurneys if we can. The partnership right now is that medical clinics will be created at these two sites for almost 700 elderly families. And so it's a partnership with the Housing Authority, with Emma, with Jacobson Trone, and the UMC, because of the proximity to and the need, the demand that they have, because they're massive consumers of healthcare. So the quality of life with this type of partnership is really integral to what we do in our mission. And I just wanted to thank Emma and thank Jacob and the UMC for everything they've done. Wanted to let you all know that we will be having an announcement on that with a ribbon cutting not too distant in the future. And I just wanted to just say that really what the UMC is doing in our area, that's where our headquarters is fantastic. The investments that we put in that area was about 250 to 300 million ourselves. And we just wanted to say thanks for the partnership, and we look forward to years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're definitely trying to get a critical mass on this campus. With critical mass, that brings opportunities like housing. With the dental school coming and eventually 100 patients per year in that school, we'll have over 400 dental schools here and dental students in El Paso. All of this contributes to that critical mass that we're trying to create on the campus. It can bring a lot more commercial development. So very exciting, and I'm thankful to our partners. Moving on to workforce. Workforce is really the bottom line to attracting industry. If we don't have a trained and skilled workforce, it's difficult to attract companies or to grow anything. So we do have a STEM camp that we have hosted here at the MCA. We've had over 9 STEM camps over the year, almost 250 middle school students coming through the Cardwell Collaborative for the STEM camp that Workforce Solutions Borderplex helps us put on. We also bring in 5 to 6 interns per summer from UTEP and really high-end universities from around the country to bring them back to expose them to potential job opportunities in our region. So we'd like to grow this area more, but workforce is a major consideration for us. This year, we also launched our healthcare think tank. We wanted to create a neutral venue where knowledgeable staff could bring together the healthcare community with robust research to be able to think about the vision for the future of healthcare in this region. What are the problems and challenges that our healthcare industry faces that we can come together to resolve as an industry? But then how can we really look ahead and say, what's the next big vision for us? So we've had a series of roundtables with different groups in the medical community, whether physicians, outpatient practice managers, nurses, hospital CEOs, and we're pulling together really a work plan for how to improve and grow this industry. One of the exciting initiatives coming out of this group is our Desert Health Center of Excellence and our Military Medical Transition Program that we're working closely with Paul Albright, who's the city's liaison with the military on. So this is a comprehensive strategy to bring together our private medical community under this Desert Health Center of Excellence concept. It is a very inclusive center of excellence with prevention and public health components, with research, with healthcare delivery, and with potential commercialization opportunities. We hope to market our region's healthcare industry in this positive light, saying that because we live in a desert, we have a lot of expertise in desert health issues. So we are moving forward with that concept, but we're also beginning to work with AUSA, with Cypress and others to try to bring a center of excellence to the new William Beaumont Army Medical Center. We have an amazing new facility being built here in our region, and we hope to bring amazing programs from the DoD into that hospital where we can partner better. All of this can lead to better transition of military medical personnel into our private medical industry. So we're creating a robust program around that right now, but the more closely we're aligned with the military healthcare community in general makes for a more easy transition into healthcare jobs in our community. So this is an exciting initiative. Our Innovation Center is one of our flagship programs. We're excited to be in the third year of that. We have supported over 50 innovators and startup companies with our Innovation Center. And we're really proud of the accomplishments it's had in helping these startup companies to launch, close contracts. We've had one company sell out of the MCA. And we know that there's other things that we need to continue to do to grow the innovation ecosystem. And so funding is a big piece of that. Not only do we provide funding and facilities and other support that startup companies need, the bottom line is that they also need money. They have families, our innovators, and they need research dollars, they need dollars to create their companies. And so we are really excited that we also focus on not only giving proof of concept funds, but we want to grow a seed fund to fund these companies. So as you know, last year we won the Economic Development Administration's I-6 Challenge Grant. This is a very competitive national grant that not only gives $750,000 of funding to innovators or to incubators, but it's also really the seal of approval that you have the right program going on in your community because this is so competitive. Shortly after winning that grant, we were excited to win the Economic Development Administration's Seed Fund Grant. So this is bringing us $300,000 over 3 years to do the feasibility planning and startup of a seed fund that will help fund our local innovators, which is so incredibly important. To talk a little bit about the program that we provide and the support that the MCA gives, I want to introduce Quinn Gao with Acu Urine DX. She is an innovator from our region with a really exciting technology that we hope to see her launch soon.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Qing. I'm a postdoc researcher working with Dr. Wayne Lee in UTEP. We are working on a reliable urine test for prostate cancer screening and funded Acuren DX Inc. for the commercialization of this idea. In this project, we analyze 1 milliliter of urine samples from patients with analytical instruments, and then the urine profile will be processed through the diagnosis model and the risk assessment system to identify whether the patient has cancer or not and what the risk level of the disease is. The professional report will be produced accordingly and sent to medical doctors directly to help make the treatment decisions. While working on the technology improvements, we made the first step of the technology commercialization with the help from Medical Center of the American Foundation, MCA. From September 2018 to June 2019, we were involved in MCA Innovation Center program, which provided us professional mentoring for business initiation, strengthened our business model, and polished our first business pitch deck. At the end of this program, we attended the MCA Demo Day and won the Audience Favorite Award, $1,000, which helped fund our startup, Acuren DX Inc. And after the program, the MCA is still providing us the funding information. In August 13, we had a chance to talk to the managers of federal agency programs, SBIR and STTR, early stage funding to small business, and meet one-on-one with program decision makers. Throughout more than 1 year, MCA helped us a lot in our early stage networking, and also help us get the media coverage in El Paso Inc. and El Paso Herald Post. We do appreciate all the help from the MCA. Thank you.
So as you can see, confirmation that there are no better ideas coming out of big cities. Great ideas come out of all kinds of cities, especially cities like El Paso. The question is, how well do we support them to get to their commercial objectives? And that's what we're trying to do at the MCA. Next, I want to talk about clinical research and clinical trials. This is one of our obligations to the city, but we are trying to bring the non-academic medical community, as well as the academic medical community, more into the space of clinical research or clinical trials. This provides not only incredible economic opportunity to our region, to our medical providers and others, it's also really a form of advanced care. If you are very sick and you have exhausted your treatment options with your physician, the only other option you have is clinical trials. Most patients in El Paso have to leave town today to get access to clinical trials. So if we want to talk about having a very advanced and well-rounded and good healthcare industry here, we need to bring clinical trials to this community. But what's exciting, it is a major economic opportunity as well. This year, we launched a clinical trials website that is the first place that you can go off the MCA website as a patient, as a doctor, or as a trial sponsor to one location and see where all the trial activity is happening in town. A doctor can then refer a patient to a trial site, or a patient can go in and look and say, hey, I have this problem. Where can I access a clinical trial? Or if you're a Pfizer looking for a Hispanic community in which they can perform trials, they will find robust information about our community. We've also worked hard to recruit clinical research companies to El Paso to help build that complex infrastructure that doesn't exist today. So with that, I want to introduce Jody Casey, who is with one of those companies, Elago Research, and she's going to say a few words.
Hi, Mayor and Council. It's great to see you all again. My name's Jody Casey, and as Emma mentioned, I work for Elago. Elago is named a top 25 startup out of Austin, and we are an integrated clinical research organization. And the MCA recruited Elago to El Paso about 14 months ago, and then helped match me into the role with Elago. And I'm now a vice president with a company, and I sit on the board. But what's so exciting about our company being in this community is really for three key reasons. One is the impact we have on patients. So we're running a late-stage cancer trial right now, where otherwise really the option for these patients is to go into hospice or to fly to Houston or to drive to the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix. So that's just incredible. That has an incredible impact for our patients here. We also started just this week a Novartis kidney trial. There's only 3 cities in the U.S. getting to run this trial, and El Paso is one of them. And so this is a really incredible opportunity for some of our patients that have advanced kidney disease. And so it's just a great benefit, as Emma mentioned. The second thing I would say is to our physicians in the community. Often we have physicians who had a great academic background before they got here, but then no avenue to then run trials once they arrived in El Paso. And so we allow for them to run trials, which is great for them, and it also helps them recruit new physicians to town. We have a really high ratio of patient to physicians here, and the sites that are now running trials are promoting it as they're trying to recruit new physicians into the El Paso community, because it allows for cutting-edge medicine and trials to be run in these practices. And then the last thing I would say is we impact economic development. So we now have 4 employees in El Paso. We have 2 study managers, and the median income for a study manager is $75,000. We also have 2 executives here, myself and Shane Mercer, who left the Army. He was a major in the Army, and he and his family wanted to stay in El Paso. We were able to hire him into Elago as well as an executive. So we have 4 employees now. I hope that will expand to about 8 by year end. So those are the 3 key things that I think clinical trials are impacting this community on, and we would not be here, and I would not be in this role if it wasn't for the MCA. And with that, I'm going to show you all a quick 45-second video that we built with the MCA, if IT doesn't mind putting that up.
A unique region, really. We are right at the intersection of where Juarez, Mexico comes together with El Paso, Texas, and southern New Mexico. It has a lot of very unique, interesting history where two cultures come together. My name is Emma Schwartz. I'm the president of the Medical Center of the Americas Foundation, and I have over 20 years experience in healthcare management and innovation. One of the Medical Center of the Americas Foundation's efforts is to bring more clinical trials to this region where there have been very few. That is a very useful thing for a population like ours that can be uninsured or underinsured, in that it gives patients access to cutting-edge medications and treatments through the clinical research, sometimes at discounted or at no cost to the patient. So clinical research is trying to bring new drugs into development so that people can use them every day to have a better quality of life. And clinical trials happen before those drugs come to market, and they allow for patients to be able to access new and cutting-edge medicine, and those drugs eventually become the standard of care for patients. El Paso is a largely underserved market, and we don't often have access to trials. All major cities are at least a 4 to 5 hour drive from here, or a flight. Elligo is bringing trials to the physicians in this community in order to give patients here access. And it's incredibly important that we have that kind of access here in El Paso, because traveling for trials can be very prohibitive to most of our population. So having clinical trials in a community like El Paso also helps us attract and retain physicians in our community. In a smaller community like ours, sometimes it's hard to find physicians who want to move here, and often we have a very high patient to physician ratio, so it's harder to get into a physician. And what I've heard from doctors is if they're running research, they're much more attractive to these new young doctors graduating med school who are looking at what the best community for them is and what the best practice is. And if you're running research in your practice, doctors are much more interested in potentially partnering with you and coming to our community to be a physician here. Emma, tell me why clinical trials are important to the Medical Center of the Americas, and tell me about the process you went through to eventually bring Elligo into our community.
Clinical trials are, it's such an interesting topic. When we were going through strategic planning and what we wanted to do to bring more healthcare options here and a biomedical industry, we had a community-wide strategic planning
I
session.
think this is the longer version, so we're going to go ahead and cut it off. You got the point. But what I do want to say is that Elligo does have a series of these videos that they've created, really focusing on what it takes to bring clinical research to smaller communities. And they're highlighting El Paso. So this is going to be really good promotion for our community. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you all.
Moving on to Bio El Paso Juarez. This is also a relatively new initiative, less than 2 years old, where we created a 501c6 association, membership-based association, to convene industry, government, nonprofit, and education institutions to improve the life sciences industry. And we're focusing really initially on the medical device industry. A lot of people don't know that we have over 40,000 people working in the medical device industry in El Paso and Juarez. A lot of the manufacturing jobs are in Juarez, although some do exist in El Paso, but a robust professional support system exists in El Paso, and we want to see that grow. We were very fortunate this year to have won an EDA grant in combination with Workforce Solutions Borderplex for $180,000 to do a binational study of this industry. So they came in and interviewed over 60 stakeholders in El Paso and Juarez, took tours of many manufacturers and suppliers, and they put together for us a 5-year strategic plan on what we need to do to improve that industry. Working now with Workforce Solutions and with Borderplex Alliance, we've got collaborative economics, running a series of task forces for us under workforce, value chain, and innovation to try to address a lot of the issues found in the study. So this is a huge focus for us. We're really excited. We have over 39 members of Bio El Paso Juarez today, both from El Paso and Juarez. And with the funds received from those membership dues, we can do things like go to the MedTech conference that we went to in Boston this year. We were excited to take over 13 El Pasoans to Boston. We had a booth at the MedTech conference. We had Workforce Solutions, the City of El Paso sent a representative from Economic Development, Borderplex Alliance was there, RJL Real Estate sent folks. We had people from our organization and the Foreign Trade Zone. So we were able to represent El Paso incredibly well at this medical device conference. We had one person come to our booth and said that El Paso was mentioned 7 times in a presentation in one of the conference rooms, and so they had to come by our booth to see what was happening.
Giving a voice to this industry and to El Paso and Juarez is incredibly important for attracting industry, and we're doing that, I think, very successfully through Bio El Paso Juarez. I want to introduce Jose Gerardo now from G Labels. He is a member of Bio El Paso Juarez, a very active member, and he has a company here in El Paso in the medical device industry space.
Thank you, Emma. I'm going to read this because sometimes I run out of English, so forgive me about that. Good morning, City Council, Representative, Mayor, City Manager, and City staff. My name is Jose Gerardo, as Emma just mentioned, and on behalf of the employees and partners at General Labels and Printing, my company here in El Paso, we provide sophisticated printing and labeling for the binational manufacturing industry for both El Paso and Juarez, and we have many other customers all around the world, this being a global economy. The growth of the local medical device industry is very important, and we have seen it firsthand. In the last year, since we began our relationship with the Bio-EPJ cluster, about 80% of our sales leads and developing leads have come from members of the cluster. Not every medical company is yet a member of the cluster, but we're working very hard to recruit them. We would like to thank you for the continued support to the MCA and their initiatives. It is truly amazing what they have been able to do in such a short time. I'm a minuscule member of this partnership with them, and in one way or another, I'm being approached by people who have heard of this Bio-EPJ cluster to make contact with them. They are making waves, and they are going far and wide. Since becoming a member of this organization, our horizons have been expanded to understand the resources that are needed to impact growth, innovation, and professional development of our community's workforce, as well as our own associates. My associates are very, very excited at learning these new technologies that a year or two ago were completely foreign to us. Through the creation of various initiatives focused on the biomedical ecosystem, we have identified many opportunities that are unique to our region. And once further developed through the work of Bio-EPJ Juarez, will provide our community with a competitive advantage over other regions. That is very, very important. I co-chair the value chain portion of the Bio-EPJ, and I can tell you that I get a lot of requests from partners that want to stop being the source of cheap labor. They don't want to provide muscle power to all these companies that come and want to come and assemble this. They want to provide brain power, and we certainly have the capacity. We have very well-educated young individuals, a very strong economy, good support, good technical support from veterans that are rotating out of the military, great medical system, and very good companies. 80% of the employment in El Paso comes from small ownership. We need to provide support for them so that they can grow and become those world-class companies that we so desire and are needed to. I would like to recognize, to finish this, I would like to recognize the efforts of the NCA's team for their relentless and passionate pursuit of these goals, and we really would like to thank you for your ongoing support, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Not a minuscule company. They do great, great work. Thank you, Jose Gerardo. And just a couple summary slides here, but we've been in operation for 14 years, the Medical Center of the Americas, under the Impact Fund for about 8 years now. And if you look at the accomplishments of this organization, it is something that you can all be proud of. We've completed 3 master plans, over $500,000 of environmental remediation. The Texas Tech School of Nursing was developed under the city's Impact Fund. The Cardwell Collaborative was built on time and on budget, almost fully occupied.
The VA Wellness Center, we won a very competitive bid on that, so $16 million project, bringing 190 new jobs to this community. The Innovation Center, supporting over 50 innovators and startup companies, winning very prestigious nationally competitive grants. The Healthcare Think Tank, recruiting clinical research companies to town, growing new jobs here in the community, and then visioning for the future of healthcare in this region. And Bio El Paso Juarez with 39 members, again, bringing more grants together, helping to grow our relationship with our sister city in Juarez in a very productive way, and building an organization that will be here for a long time. Right now we have over $50 million in assets that we're trying, again, to create a company that is not just bringing money in and spending it each year, but that we're growing a long-term asset. For a very quick view of our financial situation, we have received $22.4 million in allocations from the City of El Paso since the beginning of this grant, and we've brought about almost $70 million in total to the project through grants, philanthropy, and new market tax credits and other financing mechanisms. We're also very proud that a big portion of the funding comes from non-local sources. So we are trying to bring new money into El Paso instead of just pulling from local philanthropists. And if you look at how we spend our money in 2019, about 30% on programs, 60% on building, 10% on management, and less than 1% in fundraising. With that, I have Carlos Ortega, our CFO, who has the required annual financial disclosures for the city.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Reporting on the use of the impact funds by the MCA for the period September 1 through August 31. In the format prescribed by the grant agreement, we have impact funds. We have the appropriation from the city for the applicable period for 2019 of $2,883,623. Then we have the expenditures grouped according to the format in the grant agreement, which is broken down between non-building components and building components. So the non-building components, we have personnel expenses consisting of salaries, wages, and benefits of $1,074,524. We have detailed payroll and benefit records available for review at MCA offices at any time to support these numbers, as well as the employees that comprise that number. We have professional fees and contract services of $142,000 and administrative expenses of $117,000. In your written materials, we have details for those items. We also have match expenses for grants of $89,900. We have land acquisition for this time period of $54,082, and a small amount of capital expenditures, making total non-building components of $1,481,950. With respect to the building components, we have a commitment to the Texas Tech Hunt School of Nursing of $612,000 a year that we have there till 2029. And then we have the expenses associated with the Cardwell Collaborative of $682,016. So the total building component expenses were $1,294,016. Total expenditures for this reporting period are $2,775,966, leaving a surplus of $107,656. I want to show one other slide as opposed to going into the details which are in your written materials that I think are important, and that shows you these expenses broken down by the programs. So you can see that for our biomedical cluster program, as we define it, we have $744,591 of expenses that are allocated and committed in supporting that unit, which make up about 27% of the expenses. The infrastructure program components are $1,702,960, or 61% of our expenditures. Management in general is $322,000, or 11%. And a very, very small part for fundraising of $5,765. That adds up to the total $2,775,966 that you saw on the first slide. That's our report. That's in accordance with the format prescribed by the grant agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. And just to conclude, this shows some of the grant wins for 2019. showing the importance of diversifying the funding that we get, that we're not just relying on the city of El Paso, that we are looking for grants, philanthropy, membership income, rental income, and a lot of other creative ways to bringing in funding to the MCA. And that concludes our report. If you have any questions, I'm happy to
Representative
take those.
Schwartzbein.
Thank you again, Ms. Schwartz. Thank you for everybody that has come and speak and helping with a vital part of our regional economy. I just wanted to say that I'm really excited about, and I think when we met in my office earlier, I'm really excited about exploring those possibilities between the new William Beaumont. I had an opportunity to travel to Aurora, Colorado, I think last summer, and their Rocky Mountain Regional VA Medical Center, which is about 12 different buildings across 30 acres. It's tremendous, the amount of economic development potential, and I think really zoning in and zeroing in on working at William Beaumont, there's tremendous opportunities for other contracts and other explorations and research based upon the honey trap that is the Beaumont Medical Center. So I'm really excited about that, and thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Representative Lazaria.
Good morning. Oops. Thank you, Emma. I just wanted to personally congratulate you on being appointed to the Governor Abbott's, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. I think that's going to be tremendous for the city of El Paso. Thank you to you and your team for the excellent presentation. I had a quick question about, you were talking about land acquisition for the benefit of the public. Can you tell us a little bit about 440 Reynolds?
Sure. 440 Reynolds is a small property that we purchased in 2009 from Brown & Brown Insurance. We got a loan we have a loan from United Bank that funded that. We renovated that building. Texas Tech has also put in renovations, and we have a lease with Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center for that space.
Okay, thank you. And also, I'm excited to hear about Sun Plaza in Chelsea for the 700 elderly people that live there, that they're going to have their own medical facility. I think that's excellent. I was just curious, are you all doing any kind of research between wellness and health nutrition? As you know, I'm a vegan. I'm a vegan for health reasons, and so I'm just curious, are you all looking at that aspect?
I'm personally trying to be a vegan, very unsuccessfully, but I'm trying to get there because it is important. We don't focus, none of our programs focus specifically on wellness, but we are excited that with UT Houston School of Public Health moving into our building, one of the recent recruitments that they made is that they brought on Leo Wiggum, who used to run the Institute for Healthy Living and Active Living, or Healthy Eating and Active Living at UTEP. And so we are looking to partner more with UT Houston to see what kind of research projects and other ways we can support their research into health and wellness. There's so much you can do with wellness before you ever have to get to healthcare. So prevention is an important piece of the overall puzzle, and we hope to get more involved with that in the future.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's a great industry around health and wellness as well.
Nutrition is the key.
Yeah.
Emma, one thing, we passed the Cancer Prevention and Research Institute bond, same time we passed our public safety bond, which is two monumental facets. One of the things we're looking at, and I'm now chairman of that board, is getting dollars out for infrastructure so that they can attract the research that they can't seem to attract, because most of the research infrastructure runs from UT Southwest all the way down to MD Anderson and Baylor and et cetera, et cetera. So I spoke with Dr. Lang after the last CPRIT meeting, told him what was going on, told him what we're trying to do. This is actually something we spoke to the Lieutenant Governor about at the beginning of the year before they even came down to approving the bond. And I haven't had a chance to talk to Dr. Wilson, but they've got over $20 million in cancer prevention grants at Texas Tech. There have been some. They've got one research grant for breast cancer, which I think is about 1.5 or 1.8 million. I can't remember. But we need to figure out collectively how we can assist in the infrastructure, in the research infrastructure for Texas Tech and UTEP, so that they're in a position to attract some of the researchers that CPRIT will pay for to come out. So just kind of file that in the back of your mind and talk to them as you can on that. Maybe there's something collectively the three of you can do to do that, because I mean, that's the only thing holding us back from some of that research on cancer is that we don't have the infrastructure. And they talk about this collegiality that they want when they come out and they have at MD Anderson and all that. So whatever we can do to accelerate that, I think we're going to have to change the structure of CPRIT to allow for some dollars to go to infrastructure. And we've talked about that at our meeting and in the last meeting a couple of weeks ago. So we got to have a receptacle place for it. So whatever you all can do to help as you're out and about doing your thing and others are, we need to really work on that.
Absolutely. It's critical that we get the number of applications and the number of collaborative applications up out of El Paso. And I've spent a little bit of time in Houston since the CPRIT reauthorization happened, meeting with some of the folks out there who have received some interesting CPRIT grants recently to get educated on what we can do to be winners of those grants in the future. And so it's a whole new world with 10 more years of CPRIT ahead of us, and we need to start
well, we're looking at $300 million a year, but I think when I talked to Dr. Lang, I said, I think we need to get Wayne Roberts and some of the folks out here, Dr. Wilson, to meet with them and with UTEP to get focused on what we can do and what they need to do to accelerate their opportunities.
We'll make sure that those conversations happen quickly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Very good.
Next item.
Okay. Thank you.
Item number 4 is presentation and update on the Mexican American Cultural Center.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Ben Fife, Assistant Director for Museums and Cultural Affairs Department. All right, if IT can bring up the presentation. Today I am here before you to provide an update on the Mexican American Cultural Center. You last received an update in August of this year. As you are aware, this project aligns to 2 of Council's strategic goals, both 4.1 and 4.2. Very briefly, what I'd like to be able to do today is give you a synopsis, as we always do whenever we do a management update on a project, of how we got to where we are, brief you on current outreach, and also walk you through what the next steps are for this project. So project history goes back to November of 2012, when over 100,000 El Paso voters approved the project as part of the Quality of Life Bond, or 72% of the voters in that election. Since January 2013 to about September of 2018, there's been data and analysis provided by 11 consulting firms and architectural firms at various phases of this project. There has been continued outreach and opportunities for the community to provide input and for that input to drive decision making. And we've worked really hard to make sure that the information about those opportunities and information about our progress is continually going out to the community. So since then, we've had 25 media releases. There have been 8 paid advertisements, 5 segments on Your City in 5, which have had over 2,000 views. And on Facebook, we've had over 26,000 people reached with information about the Mexican American Cultural Center. September of last year, the alternative site was selected by Council to be the main library for the Mexican American Cultural Center. And beginning immediately to August of this year, we had significant meetings with library staff and stakeholders to get outreach and figure out how their needs could drive design as we move forward. Because we want to make sure that at the end of this process, both the MAC and the library feel like they have exited with a win. We want to make sure that we have an opportunity to optimize spaces at the library. And we also know we have a unique opportunity in a relatively new facility to do a bit of a do-over and to address challenges that staff realized were there after they moved into the library. So those are all things that are front and center for us. Those meetings took place with friends of the library, with staff of library, with library users multiple times. And then this last August, we were in front of Council for the award for professional services to begin design. And that will kick off a new phase of outreach, and I'm going to walk you through that in a bit. But before I do that, I do want to take the opportunity to walk you through all of the outreach that took place prior to that award, and to frankly dispel some of the conversation and the myth that there has been no outreach whatsoever on the Mexican-American Cultural Center. To date, prior to award of that contract, there have been 112 hours of outreach, opportunities for the community to provide input continuously. And so I'm going to walk you through what each of those was. First, we had 8 public workshops with on-site translation. These were located 4 downtown with free parking. And then we also concluded, we continued with 4 meetings that paired up districts. So for example, District 3 and 7 had a meeting within their areas in which we also had on-site translation as well. We had about 250 attendees. We additionally had another public meeting with on-site translation and free parking downtown with 60 attendees. 7 presentations to council and the Bond Oversight Advisory Committee. This project is unique in that it actually had a subcommittee created by council resolution that was made up of appointees by mayor and council to actually drive recommendations on programming, facility decisions, and also site location and name. This is really unique in that no other project has had this. Each of those 19 meetings followed the requirements of the Texas Open Meeting Act with agendas posted 72 hours prior to the actual meeting. We took public comment at every single one of those meetings. Those meetings actually happened in the public space, but there were also working groups within working groups within the subcommittee to actually do research outside of the meetings and bring that back. We checked with IT, and we've had almost 3,000 views of those meetings, which are archived on the city's website. And I should mention, actually, that the discussion of co-location at the library as a potential site came up in open session of those subcommittee meetings as far back as 2015. We additionally had 5 focus groups that were organized around various affinities like education, economic development, the arts, that reached 75 people from various stakeholder groups. We've had 22 meetings with individuals and affinity groups reaching about 400 people. Almost anybody who wanted to sit down with staff and with some of the consultants had the opportunity to do that and provide input. There have been 14 presentations at council district meetings over the course of 6 years. We also had 1 local artist needs assessment. This was an online survey that was pushed out via Constant Contact and Facebook because we want to make sure that the MAC, at the end of the day, really is meeting the needs of our local artists. They need to be front and center. We want the MAC to be a vibrant incubator for cultural production here on the borderland, and we want to make sure that we do that right with artists helping to drive some of the decisions. We had about 100 responses to that. And lastly, we had 2 open house events. One of them was very successful. I will say the open house event that was the most recent, for lack of a better word, was really hijacked, largely pushed by a group, an entity that the city had determined they would no longer work with on this project. It was actually not very pleasant to have to sit through. It ended up turning out a lot of people and turning off a lot of people who'd showed up to actually be able to understand how this was going to work in the library. A lot of families with young kids were actually scared to be able to stay in the space. And actually, there were several council members there who witnessed this firsthand. It's something we don't want to see happen again, and we've also been given a lot of indications that these groups would like to have this happen again as we move into this next phase of outreach. And luckily, the city manager has been very clear that that will not be tolerated for staff, for all of the firms that are engaged in this process, and for the community, because again, we need constructive and productive dialogue. So after the service award, we've continued with the new phase of outreach. August 29th, we had a community meeting for the public art component. As a reminder, this is the companion memorial piece to the men of Company E. We had almost a full house at the El Paso Museum of History where we discussed the project. The feedback was tremendously positive. We know we are on the right track. I will say the only things that we heard from the community that we needed to work on was exactly how many different men were listed on the monument, and at what sort of period in time we cut off who's listed and who's not. So we're working with the community right now to determine how we make those decisions so that everyone feels included. As of September 1st, we had let you know that we, as part of audience building for the MAC and to raise awareness, every group or artist that is being funded through our cultural funding program right now, if they have projects that are related to Mexican, Latino, or Chicano identity or cultural production, they are required to use the MAC logo on all of their materials. So if you go to an exhibition, a production, a workshop, you're going to see the information about the MAC there. That reaches hundreds of thousands of people a year, and again, helps us build the audience so that when we open that door, we're not waiting for people to come. We've already built up our audience. November 9th, we had a focus group for library users and stakeholders related to the library renovations that will be initiated by the MAC. This is the first phase of the project. We followed that up the following week with a public workshop that addressed the same topics. And I want to walk you through what we learned, what we heard in both of those. Our focus group, there was a real emphasis on making sure that spaces become even more usable, even more accessible. So we heard a lot of things about natural light, accessibility, spaces that make sense for families, not just in terms of families being able to get to the site, but also making sure, there are things like clear sight lines from the children's center all the way through the area so that a young mom or a father or a grandparent can actually see their child as they run off and they're exploring the library. We also heard about things like making sure that the common area between the teen town and the children's section worked really well. That's a space for users who come in who oftentimes have children at both age ranges. They want to make sure that there's a clear connection between the spaces, again, making sure it works for families. What we heard at the following week's community workshop, we heard a lot of the same issues come up. Making sure services are accessible. The Border Heritage Center came up in both meetings as something that people really wanted to make sure was front and center, the way it had been historically in the library. The multipurpose space, natural light. We also heard about including public art in this phase, which we actually technically had not done yet. And so I will give you a heads up that when we bring our annual 2020 plan to City Council for Public Art, you will see a project for this particular part of library renovations. The next steps, right now the design team has taken all of the feedback from those meetings, those community sessions, the focus groups, and they're trying to see what they can distill down into a design that they will then take back to the groups to be able to show them how it was incorporated, how it can work, and to continue those discussions. In February, we will have national recruitment for the MAC director formally begin, although the contract is already in place, and we have already begun meetings with the recruiter to discuss what makes sense for the MAC, the type of candidates that we're interested in, and I think more importantly, letting the recruiters know exactly what type of community this is, so that we make sure we get the best possible fit to drive the project forward. January and February, we will be looking to present to you at your community meetings to talk about the library renovation phase of this project. So we would ask for you to let us know what works. We want to make sure that every resident who goes to your meetings understands what this process is, how it's been, what the information that has informed the process, and make sure that everyone feels comfortable with the progress. We'll also be coming forward at that time with contract for construction manager at risk. And then in March and April, we will begin those focus groups and those community workshops again, but this time for the actual MAC component of the project. And then in May and June, just as we did with the library portion, we will be looking to you to give us access to your community meetings to be able to share information on the project. This summer, the library renovations will commence. Construction of the actual MAC part of the facility would commence in fall of 20, and then we are looking at opening in 2022, around the same time as the Children's Museum, which will be a really exciting time in the Downtown Arts District. Before I finish, I would just like to remind everybody that, again, the idea here is to make sure we're optimizing spaces. Library is not losing spaces per se. We're actually increasing the usable space in the library as it stands right now to be able to optimize programming and amplify their efforts while delivering a state-of-the-art Mexican-American Cultural Center that is double the size of what would have been possible at the Chavez Theater at half the cost. And with that, I am open to questions.
Hi, Ben, thanks. I don't know that this is necessarily a question for you, but a few months ago, I went to a Friends of the Library store outside of my district, and they were a little overwhelmed with books. They said that a lot of books had been cleared out of the downtown library due to the construction. So I went to a few other Friends of the Libraries, and I went to the downtown library and had this confirmed many times. And it's a little concerning to me because we were told that there would be no negative effect to the actual library with this combination. So I didn't know if we could get actual data on how many books were removed.
I would actually ask Mary Helen Michaels,
Sure,
the branch
absolutely.
manager. I will say, as she's walking up here to address that question, that the store actually, when we are finished with this process, the store at the downtown library is actually going to be right next to the entrance.
I understand that, but that's a different thing. You're talking about a store selling books, and we're talking about actual education and books in our public library, and we were told that this wouldn't be affected, so. And this was about, I will tell you, what month is it right now? So this was about June, July.
I apologize, I understood you said the Friends of the Library
So
store?
books were taken from the library and given to the Friends of the Library to sell. So it was, yeah, sorry.
Good morning. My name is Mary Helen Michaels. I'm the manager of the Maine Public Library branch. Sorry, I don't have those exact figures for you, but I will stress that removing books from the collection is a standard, regular part of professional library work. It's called weeding, and that also it can be. People can get an impression that there's a lot more being taken from the library. Many people donate their material, used material, to the library. Many times they redonate books that we have discarded and they purchase from the Friends bookstore, and then they bring them back to us to sell again. So sometimes you will look at a range of books that have been discarded or that have been given to the Friends, and they may not necessarily have all been recent discards.
Sure.
I know that there was a request sent up to library administration. I know that they were pulling the numbers. I'm very sorry. Ms. Martinez was unable to be here at the last minute today, but I'd be happy to get that and send it to you all.
Yeah,
I know
that would be
she
great if
was
you could
working
follow
on
up
it.
with that info.
But it is a concern that comes up periodically. It comes up in community after community. It's very heartening to see how highly people value the collection and the books. At the same time, books do not maintain their value over time. Many, many books reach the end of their usable life, and we need to make space for new books. It's a very dynamic balancing act that we go through, making the space and keeping what it has long-term value.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. If we could get the data on how many books have been discarded over the last 3 years. Because there was it seemed like a big concern from multiple Friends of the Libraries as well as people at the downtown library. And again, we were told that this wouldn't affect the library, and if that's happening, there's a real concern.
It is an ongoing process at all library locations to weed the collections. And given our staff considerations, sometimes it's not the top of the list, but it is an ongoing thing.
Is there a way?
Representative Schwartzbein?
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a way to request that information year by year as opposed to just in total?
So the last 3 years is what was requested. We can annotate that by year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Ben. I think that this brings up a lot of good information that I think the council and the public probably are asking for.
You know I can't help it. Dion Mack, former director of the library. The weeding policy is very well outlined and detailed in terms of how we keep materials, what category of materials. We have interlocal agreements with the Friends of the Library to allow for the sales One thing that could be helpful is if you could let your constituents know that there are sale opportunities within. We've had the least amount of sales at the downtown library. The West Side does very, very well. All those resources go back, to support programs throughout. We get lots of donations. Those donations are generally funded through, filtered through to the Friends if they can sell them. What has historically happened over the last 7 years is that because of the limited space and that people primarily come to the main library for the donations, that the Friends of the main library, which is one of the smaller groups, try to find homes for those at the West Side or the Northeast. We have 10 years or more of data and things that were drawn from the collection. That information is well segmented. That needs to be looked at looked at along with the type of materials. For example, we don't keep science books that are more than 5 years old. It goes to the relevance of the materials. So this is not just about, space, within the building. It really is about getting to a place where your collection is fresh, it is relevant, and that it's being presented in a way that is respectful to the community. You'll see of the vast majority of what is actually being discarded don't even make it for sale, because what actually moves a lot for us as a community are children's books.
Sure, and I absolutely understand the weeding process, and this is a thing that happens every year. I'm just letting you know a concern of mine. I've also heard from members of the community, and I don't know if this is true because it was not verified, like my personal experience, but that they were told that books were sent to recycling companies in masses. So yeah, if we could just see the numbers on that so we can verify it.
So if you're looking at the numbers without understanding the context and the process and what libraries do, then it's not going to be giving you the full picture. So what's being sent to the recycling companies, primarily a lot of mass market paperbacks, they are at the end of their useful life, and we actually get resources coming back to the library as a process for that. So it's easy for people to say we should never throw away books, and I think that's what Mary Helen was trying to get to. As librarians, we have a conversation all the time about what's relevant to our communities and being respectful in terms of what we would like to provide.
Sure.
We are not going to put the 1951 set of encyclopedias that Grandma gave us on the shelf. We're just not.
No, I understand that, and I think if there's more data that you're saying the numbers aren't going to show us the full picture, if you have more data, I would, be welcome to that as well.
Okay, thank you. And it's a policy for the department, though.
And I would just add that no one has instructed library to change any of their policies or services that they were doing before when they're going through this new process with the MAC.
And I just want to be clear again, I understand that weeding is a process. It's the concern that this happened in mass amounts because of the combination.
Absolutely. I just wanted to make sure I was clear with you and with the council that we've not instructed them to do anything different, just for your information.
Reverend Schwartzbein.
Thanks. Once again, Ben, thank you for it. I just have a couple of quick questions. One, I know this is a CMAR, but is this a design build, or what's going to be the process there? It's probably a total Sam question.
Sam Rodriguez, city engineer. So the construction manager at risk, we bring on a company that's going to be working directly with the designers. And what we're able to do under this delivery process is we're able to release early packages. So as we complete remodel design for like the second space of the library as an example, we're able to release that under that contract, and they're able to start construction while we continue to develop the design for the MAC. And so that's the delivery process for a construction manager at risk.
Okay. In terms of the focus group and the community workshop, you provided a list of the different items that people brought up. Realistically, how many of those sort of suggestions or comments are going to be incorporated into the sort of final design?
We can provide you in the next update and kind of show you exactly what we incorporated. There was some off the top of my head specifically, the stairs coming down to the basement and the sub-basement was something that was brought up as being able to widen those and expand those. And that's something that we've been exploring with our consultant and look at the structural feasibility of being able to do that. That building is a very stout building that's got a lot of structural elements, and so that's one that we may not be able to accommodate, but for the most part, when you look at like the public art, like he mentioned, when you look at the spaces, the rooms, and how it's going to be laid out, we're able to work out most of those recommendations into the design. Specifically, things like elevators are going to be upgraded as a result of this project. So again, as much as we can accommodate from a feasible from a design and constructability perspective, we're able to do that under this project.
And I know that it's a balance, right, between modernizing, understanding that you know, with generations ahead, there's always needs for a library to expand what it does. Talking about having a coffee shop or bookshop element, obviously the teen town and other sort of things too, but a library also is a place for respite. It's a place of contemplation and a quiet place as well. And so I just hope that as we move forward, I know that we're going to be honoring that as well, because libraries also serve that purpose as well too.
If I may, Representative, that actually did come up quite a bit. And one of the things that was requested was to be able to have spaces for programming, because the library is a very vibrant space that does a lot of work, but also have, you know, similar to a study room in a university library, to have zones where you can actually go and just sort of seal off that noise or seal off that activity and just sort of lose yourself in the material that you're exploring.
Great,
So, yes.
that's wonderful. And then just last question, I know, Mayor, sorry. So I think in sort of concerns that the community have expressed, and I've had folks come and reach out to me before, I don't think it was a question necessarily 100% on the amount of outreach. It's the outreach relating to the new location specifically. And so I'm happy to hear about the meetings that are happening in March and April in terms of the focus group and in terms of the community meetings relating to the MAC part. How is that going to differ than some of the sort of previous engagement relating to the MAC?
So this is actually going to be structured exactly the same way that these recently completed library meetings were structured. It is a little bit of sort of a charrette style workshop, but it allows people to really actively engage in design solutions that they think will work for their needs. But again, we have a lot of data. We have 6 years worth of data and professional consultation. So we really are at a point where we're going to have a lot of information to help drive this process. But again, it will be another opportunity for the community to come in at this point, at this juncture, knowing that we now have this location and it's got to work here, to be able to address those concerns. And it'll, again, kick off a similar process. We will send that information to you just as we did the library reach out, to make sure that we have as many people there as possible so that we get the best information possible.
I know that those meetings that were there were during the day. Are these going to be on the weekend or in the evening? Or
So both of those meetings previous for the library were during the weekend.
Okay.
So we would look to do that as well, because that's important for us. For our department, we always look to either do evening or weekends, because most artists and people working in the cultural community have day jobs, and we want to make sure that they know that we're valuing that, and we want to make sure that we get that input.
Great. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, item 5.
Item number 5 is discussion and action on a resolution for City Council to approve the 2020 capital funding plan.
Mayor and Council, Sam Rodriguez, City Engineer. So at a previous council meeting, I gave you a presentation on the work plan that was going to inform the final recommendation that's before you today. So it's a very similar presentation that I'm going to go through, and with the modifications that were brought up during the last council meeting. As we put the program together, the direction from the city manager was include anything that is that is mandatory, that would impact the services that we're providing to the community. And that's what you, or addresses public safety, or we have received direction from City Council to include. And that's what's included. Animal services is one of the items that's being addressed as part of the capital plan. The MPO match dollars, that leverages federal dollars to where we're contributing 20% of the funds to a project, and the federal government provides 80% of the dollars. The Public Health Department, I want to make sure that I keep it in front of you. We're not discussing it today, as we're not ready to make a recommendation on that, but that will eventually end up as part of this capital plan. And when we look at the infrastructure plan itself, we looked at the top 10 facilities that we have that are impacting the services that we're able to provide to the community, to include park lights. At the last council meeting, was brought up the blighted properties to include the Chelsea pool replacement, so that's been included into this plan. And then we looked at other maintenance and operational funding opportunities to include the traffic signals that have been warranted in our community, the neighborhood traffic management plan, the synchronization, and then the request to include the MCA Sun City Lights funding for it. And lastly, the planning studies to include the comp plan and Title 20 rewrite. Within the animal services, again, we're looking to provide the funding that will help us get to the 90% live release rate that will provide safe and comfortable living conditions for our pets, positive outcome for our pets in our community, as well as a safer environment for our employees. The total for animal services is $10.9 million. Most of those dollars, 8.2, is allocated for additional kennel space for the dogs. You're looking at additional HVAC improvements. This will help provide a separate HVAC system for the animal holding area as well as the office area to really improve the conditions for the air quality conditions for the employees, as well as provide a reliable system for the animal holding areas. Medical houses, again, providing that that separate space to be able to protect the healthy population of the pets, and then lastly, the vehicle transport vehicle for the pets. Within the MPO match, we have several projects that are need matching dollars. Chamisav Phase 1, pedestrian Phase 1 improvements, bicycle connectivity Phase 1, the Montana RTS. This number actually went up from the last presentation that I provided. FTA is requiring that we allocate all the dollars for that match grant so that we can finalize the $28 million that we're getting from the FTA on this project. The Highway Safety Improvement Program, $260,000. Montana widening, right-of-way match, and then the grant writer allocation. So what's included is $5.8 million into this plan. Again, Public Health Department, we know we're working on a final solution in that, and that's not included as part of this presentation, so I'm going to skip over those slides. Within the infrastructure plan, facilities, going back to the presentation that Richard gave, looking at 239 buildings that the city owns and maintains, $3.2 million square feet of usable space. We looked at, also provided presentation on information on the rate, the tax rate, when the city was going up in values and we're not able to maintain that tax rate. That's a lost opportunity to be able to keep up with these facilities, and now we're having to make up those dollars as we go along. These are some of the facilities that we encountered service disruptions. We've addressed the Museum of Art and the Fire Department Maintenance Facility. City 3 is an example. The power was out again today because of the rain. GMO Cho lights, the multi-purpose center roof needs to get replaced. Those are all included in our top 10. Just some pictures of the facilities as they exist today. Within our top 10 that we're recommending, 2 of those top 10 are part of the public safety program that will be addressed. The rest is recommended to be included into this program at a value of $7.2 million. Again, ball field lights that have been removed or are scheduled to be removed, roofs at the Viscount, multi-purpose center at the Hawkins Pool, the electrical supply at 33, City 2 HVAC control system, the Nation's Tobin's roof, the Chelio Costa HVAC system, and the Nation's Tobin's pool roof also need to get replaced. Again, this is the list of park sports field lights that have either been replaced or are scheduled to be removed. And that total is $7.2 million. The blighted properties, as was requested, the Chelsea Pool, $1.4 million is proposed to go to this site. We also wanted to include the maintenance building, the shell that's over at the Delta Yard, as well as the building that's located in downtown over at the parking lot off I-10. That total is $2.4 million. Other maintenance and operational needs, we have the traffic signals, neighborhood traffic management plan synchronization, and then the MC8 lighting, city lights. Within the traffic signals, we have 15 intersections that we have identified as being warranted. They have controlled by stop sign right now, so these would get signalized intersections. And this is the list of those intersections. Within the neighborhood traffic management plan, again, $200,000 has been allocated as part of the fiscal year 20 budget. We're requesting $300,000. The request was made at the last council meeting is what's the total amount that it would take to basically take care of the backlog. Because of the public outreach and the amount of time that it takes to implement, we're recommending that we stick with a $300,000 allocation. That would bring a total of $500,000. To really catch up with a full backlog would be about $700,000. But again, in talking to Richard and his team, the implementation, because of the public meetings that are required, we really think that this is a good starting point for us to continue the development and implementation of this program, keeping it at $300,000. And then the synchronization of signalized throughout the city. It's a 3-year rollout of $3.5 million.
Really quick question, just on the NTMP list, about how many do y'all think you can get through with the 300,000 additional?
So we're anticipating, and Richard's here, but we have estimated a total need of 700,000. So we're capturing 500,000 of that total. So about 5/7 of that, whatever that amount is.
So maybe the top 25?
30 locations.
Thank you.
Representative Nello?
I feel like this was Representative Ordaz Pellis. This was your statement to just put money in the budget to finish all of them. Was that not what this council agreed to?
Yes, and you can still do that, Representative. Our recommendation, again, to take care of all of it, it would need an additional 500,000 to additional 200,000 that's already been allocated, so it'd be a total of 700.
So we would, I see what you're saying.
But the implementation will basically not be within this next year. It'll be a 2-year process because of the public outreach that's required for each one of these locations.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
And then the MCA Sun City Lights, these are some of the concepts that were developed and that we're awaiting funding. So again, we haven't had any public meetings on these, but the concepts have been developed to be able to start that outreach if the funds get approved. And this will be located at the Reynolds facility right as you're coming up to into the MCA area off the freeway.
That's being refinanced by the TERS, correct?
No, the way it was presented, and if council approves, it will be funded under this program.
I'm sorry?
If council approves this program, it will be funded with COs under this capital plan.
Okay.
And then the planning documents, we're asking for $3 million, again, to address the comp plan, Title 20 rezoning, uptown, downtown plan. We'll be looking at the Alameda corridor, the Dyer corridor, and the 5 Points area plan. The total is $46 million, and that completes my presentation, Mayor. If you have any questions,
And again, I want to just reiterate, the direction that I gave was based on the high priority areas that we heard from council, and then also that is grounded within our strategic plan, but the things that are more imminent. And I know there's some projects in here that could be considered, not a leaky roof, something more visionary, in some of the instances and what he's recommending, but these are all high priority needs based on development and or the basic needs in some of our city facilities.
Representative Rivera?
Thank you, Mayor. Let's go back to slide 23, sir, and I agree with what you said, City Manager, but slide 23, I'm really having a problem with that because some of these items that are listed could have been taken care of through the CDBG funding in previous years. And so, to add them onto the list right now, I understand, but it was that during that time, they could have been taken care of. And for example, you have one in particular that can be taken care of next year, next funding cycle. My point is that I guess we have to prioritize our city facilities needs with these CDBG fundings to ensure that, the taxpayers don't have to pay the cost of the COs. If you look at it, like I said, there's several programs there's several that are listed here that could have been taken care of it. And so now we're coming to the taxpayers and with the amount of COs that are being requested, and I support the others, it's just the fact that on some of these are issues that could have been taken care of back then through that CDBG funding. So I think we should consider using this CDBG funding to take care and prioritize that money back into our facilities instead of having to come to the taxpayers with CEOs, or before we even give it to nonprofit groups. You know what I'm saying? Because I think our facilities are far more important right now to maintain those, to get rid of these issues that you've brought before us. So, I feel that we should again, like I said, prioritize the fact that we should use that funding, and it's our responsibility as representatives to do so. So,
Again, Representative, that ultimately that CDBG program and the recommendations that come out of the steering committee come to council. I could tell you on our side, working with Richard, we've submitted projects through the process so they could be considered. And that's obviously the whole selection of the CDBG projects that get funded has a policy that's been directed by council, and ultimately those recommendations will come to city council at that point. You know.
Thank you. That's all for now.
Representative Vanello.
Sir, we are approving this today, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, I'm going to motion, like I do every time we have a certificate of obligation, that we vote on each item individually. And Henry, I think this would help your concern. So I don't know if I have a second.
Hearing no second, the motion lapses.
If I can respond to Representative Rivera's question, and Nicole Farini's not here, but generally, just based on CDBG, typically the maintenance and repairs of public facilities are ineligible to use CDBG dollars for. So that's something that, if that's your wish or the council desire, that we'd have to go back and try to identify a way that another funding source or to another area to try to take care of these facilities. But generally, the maintenance and repairs of public facilities are ineligible for CDBG dollars.
All right, is there a motion to approve this? Motion. Is there a second? Second. A motion and a second to approve the item. Is there any further discussion? Let's vote.
There is a motion and a second to approve the resolution. On that motion, call for the vote. In the voting session, the motion passes with 5 affirmative votes. Representatives Schwarzbein, Hernandez, Salcido, Perez, Lizarraga voting aye, and Representatives Anello, Morgan, and Rivera voting nay. The motion does pass.
Thank you.
All right, are we retiring to executive session? Are we supposed to do a DMD?
Yes, we also have a DMD meeting posted for this morning.
When,
DDC.
what is it?
DDC, Downtown Development
I
Corporation.
mean Downtown Development Corporation. Is it quick? All right, can we,
And it's good news.
can we, recess this?
Yes.
All right, can I have a motion to recess?
There's a motion and a second to recess the work session. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? And the work session is in recess at 11:54 a.m. Good morning. This is a meeting of the Downtown Development Corporation for Monday, December 9th, 2019. It is 11:54 a.m. Present are board members Schwarzbein, Anello, Hernandez, Morgan, Salcido, Perez, Rivera, Lizarraga, and Board Chair Margot is also present. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the March 4th Downtown Development Corporation meeting. May we have a motion? Second. There's a motion and a second to approve the meetings. On that motion, Board Director Schwarzbein.
Aye.
Anello.
Aye.
Hernandez.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Salcido.
Aye.
Perez.
Aye.
Rivera.
Aye.
And Lizarraga.
Aye.
And Board Director Margot. Board Chair
Yes.
Margot. Thank you, and that motion passes unanimously. The next item is the FY 2019 Report on Status of the City of El Paso Downtown Development Corporation.
IT, can you bring up that presentation, please? Thank you. Okay, so here's the three things we're going to run through really quickly. So we've got the FY 2019 financial report. We'll do a recap really quickly just to remind you on what the original debt model looked like. And then we'll show you based on the FY 19 results what the updated debt model looks like for the ballpark. So here are the FY 2019 revenues. So again, primarily being funded by the voter-approved hotel occupancy tax at 2% venue project at $3.4 million. The sales tax from the ballpark that's generated through the merchandise there, $186,000. The ticket sales, And then you can see the general fund subsidy there. I've got a slide at the end that's going to show you the historical and the projected for that. But this year, the general fund subsidy came in at $87,812, which, if you'll recall from March of this past year when we did the projections, we were estimating that was going to be about $221,000. So came in much better. The hotel occupancy tax that's dedicated for the ballpark came in really, really strong. Very encouraged by what we're seeing as far as the increase in our hot revenue. And then the last item there is just an accounting entry related to the accruals of when we receive the accounts receivable and accounts payable. So overall revenue is just under 4.3 million. Some of the things that helped the FY 2019 revenues, so again, the El Paso Locomotives, this was their first year of playing soccer there at the ballpark, so we received revenue from them. We had the AAA All-Star Baseball game, which is a great event, brought a lot of visitors to the city, and that was over a 3-day span. In the FY 2019 also, so every 5 years, there's a 10% increase in those revenue sources you see there, so the rent, the parking, and the ticket fees. So the additional revenue helped as well. Just a reminder on what the original debt model looked like. So we've done this several times, so I'm going to go very slowly here because this is really, really good news on the next slide. So whenever this was presented back in 2012, the original debt model assumed, built in, it was very clear and transparent that there was a general fund subsidy that was going to be needed because there was going to be a shortfall in the revenues to cover the debt service related to the ballpark. That general fund subsidy was projected at the time, again, this was back in 2011, 2012 when they were developing the model, but at the time they were estimating that the general fund subsidy was going to be needed for the first 10 years, so all the way through the year 2023. The general fund would not be reimbursed or begin to be reimbursed until 2024, and then finally, at the end of the 30 years, in the year 2043, after the general fund was reimbursed, any expenditures as far as the subsidy, there was only about a $1 million surplus that was projected at the end of that 30 year. So this is the updated debt model based on our FY 2019 actual results. So the green section there are the actuals of what's already been completed, so through 2019. The thing I'll point out based on how the hotel occupancy tax performed in 2019, updating this model, you see 2020, that's our current fiscal year. And you'll see it's not red and it's not in parentheses, which means that's a surplus that I'm projecting for this year. So based on the projections of how the hotel occupancy tax and the other revenue sources have performed, we are projecting a surplus revenue of almost $20,000. Again, it's not much, but it's a surplus. It's not a subsidy. And then you can see that in future years, we're projecting a little bit more of an increase each year as the hotel occupancy tax and the other revenue sources continue to grow. So what does that mean? Again, reminding you about the original model, showed 10 years expected subsidy. Based on what I'm estimating this year, we've cut 4 years off of that subsidy amount. So we're down to 6 years of general fund subsidy. Not only that, the bottom yellow arrow there, you'll see the estimated surplus, almost $18 million as compared to that $1 million that was originally projected. So that's after the general fund is reimbursed, anything that we've paid as far as subsidies. That's $18 million of additional revenue now that's going to go towards capital improvement projects for the ballparks. Entering year 6, actually entering year 7 coming up here pretty soon in April. So it's going to start to need some serious investment to make sure that we maintain and keep that facility up to date. And it's a beautiful facility. It's currently accommodating not only baseball but soccer. So there will be capital improvement repairs required in the future, which the city is responsible for. So having this in place will obviously allow us to put some money aside into maintaining that facility.
So the total subsidy from the city since 2014 is somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.5 million, or a little less than
2.5, yes, sir.
About $2.5 million
And
total.
so, yes, sir. And so with this fiscal year, at the end of FY 20, so around September next year, when we start finalizing the year, any additional revenues above and beyond that debt service amount will be reimbursed to the general fund.
Yeah, so
We'll continue doing that until we recover that full 2.5 that has been provided as a subsidy for the debt service.
So the pseudo-financial experts out there who are complaining about city subsidies for this were, their numbers were erroneous. Is that not correct?
I think the good news story here is that this will be the first year of a surplus of the revenues being generated by the ballpark 4 years early. And not only that, the $18 million of additional revenue, again, to be reinvested into the ballpark for capital improvements is significant. So that it's not general fund dollars, it's revenue that's being generated through the hotel occupancy tax and through the team revenues.
That's great. Any questions? Representative Schwarzman, did you have a question?
Yeah, can we make a press release on this?
We should. This is really, really good news. And again, the FY20 again is just my projection. So
With
it's
like big picture graphics.
It's not certified. It's not done yet. But based on what I've seen, based on how the hotel occupancy tax is performed,
Well,
$20,000
we need to
surplus is-
clarify exactly what's been spent by the city out of our general revenue in support of that ballpark, total. Okay, just the number total, and what we're projecting going forth with the ultimate surplus. But the fact that from our vantage point at this time, it's ended. There is going to be no more city subsidy towards the ballpark.
That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen of the public.
4 years early.
Huh?
4 years early.
4 years early and no more subsidies.
And that really speaks to the hotel occupancy tax and how that's performing. We have obviously more hotels that are coming online, so that's just additional revenue now that's being paid towards. And also, the other thing that I didn't mention was,
So like the title would be like subsidy for ballpark ends.
What was the other thing you didn't mention?
City achieves 4 years early.
the other thing I didn't mention.
And give the amount, and just give the total
And
amount.
then like a graphic, like a pie.
Yeah.
Stay
And
focused.
then this thing.
The other thing that's important to mention is the audits that we're doing on the hotel occupancy taxes.
Right.
Very important. So we've collected over 2.2 million roughly of hotel occupancy taxes that were owed to the city that hadn't been paid. Having those audits in place obviously helped us collect those funds, but then it also helped ensure that everybody stays in compliance and that, we're working with these businesses to make sure that they're reporting properly. But again, it just speaks to just another thing that we're doing in order to make sure we're, capturing the money that's due to the city.
So economic development dollars with a return. What do you know? Reverend Schwartzman, are you finished? Is that it?
Yeah, I just hope for everybody saw
Yeah.
the title, and then I think it's a really good story. The title writes itself.
Yeah.
City subsidies are over. City finished.
Investment, city's investment, finish.
Paying off.
It is
City's
a-
investment's paying off.
Investment paying
It's
off.
paying off.
And then,
Investment
like,
paying off.
Maybe like a quote
Literally,
that we
4
could
years earlier.
insert in the mayor in the press release would say, Mayor Margot says, it's a home run for the city.
That's good.
It's good,
That's
right?
good. That's good. It's out of
We knocked it out the ballpark, ladies
the,
and gentlemen.
Representative Hernandez.
Literally.
Thank you. But the debt service is not paid off yet. And so what year is that? I can see the number.
2043.
2043, okay.
So in actually,
And-
in 2038, one of the issuances will be expired, which is why if you look at the very end of that,
And while you're doing that, that's a very good question, Representative Hernandez. And I will tell you, we've refinanced the debt and we saved millions of dollars already.
11 million.
Yeah, we saved $11 million, so maybe we can repeat that in the press release, because when we refinanced it here not too long ago, we were able to see those savings, those additional $11 million. So go ahead, Robert, with your point.
So if you look at the model here, in the year 2039, you'll see that the total revenue less debt service amount, it jumps significantly.
Right.
One of the debt issuances will be paid off in 2038, but there's still an outstanding piece that won't be done until 2043.
Okay, so the funding that's generated, the excess from 2020 to 2039, where did it goes into the fund for the DDC?
So it's all captured in a separate fund related to the Downtown Development Corporation. And so as I mentioned, any excess revenues will go back to the general fund. Once we've reached the, whatever that amount is, a little over $2.5 million to the general fund, all of those funds will stay within that fund and have to be used. And it's actually in the, not only the agreement, but the way the bonds were issued, that it has to be used for capital improvements that are related to the ballpark.
So
It's part of the venue project, the hotel occupancy tax.
So let me just understand that $2.5 million again. Are we reimbursing ourselves for the amount we subsidize?
Yes.
Okay, and then after the amount we subsidize is reimbursed, then it goes into a fund to maintain the ballpark?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we have a 5-year capital improvement program that the council has to approve. That, when's the last time we brought it?
That was the last year. I've coordinated with Sam, so there's no changes to their current CIP, but there will be eventually an update.
And that's to maintain the facility, because
that will be coming forward.
we own it.
Well, and we need to reiterate in this press release that from now on, the ballpark is paying its own debt. I mean, it's self-sufficient, self-funding, whatever you want to call it. The point is, yes, there's still debt, but it's paying for it on its own, and there are no city subsidies expected to be there at all, period. Okay, thank you. Representative Anello.
Robert, so we all know that the locomotives will not be at the Chihuahua Stadium forever, unfortunately. Do we know what the impact will be after? I mean,
It was about 80,000 that came in this year related to the locomotives.
and that helped pay off the debt 4 years sooner?
Well, that contributed towards the performance of, but if you look at the slide here, the other revenue that's being generated through the team, so primary source of revenue is the hotel occupancy tax. It's
Okay.
about 86%. The other team revenue, it's, in the grand scheme of it, is not that large. And
It's
so
in-
the
it's
80,000 won't
insignificant,
have a significant impact, but I factored it in. I assume that they're gonna be there for at least another year, and then after that, I've got it projected to where we won't receive that portion of the revenue.
And on the flip side of that, because that's a great question, Representative Anello, is that in 2020, the fall of 2020, the Plaza Hotel and the Camino Real, which is now Paso del Norte, is going to be online. The two hotels that were really, one of them was underperforming, the other one was closed. And so they're being renovated, so you can, they'll get put online. So that will add to the revenue on the motel side. So I think it will more than make up the point you're making with regard to the Chihuahuas.
Thank you.
That's a good question.
All right.
A home run for the city.
Thank you. We've already voted on this, right? Yeah. We're not voting on this one. Okay.
May we have
end
motion
this
to
one?
adjourn?
All right, adjourn. Motion to adjourn?
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? Anyone opposed? And the Downtown Development Corporation Board of Directors meeting for Monday, December 9th, 2019 is adjourned at 12:07 p.m. May we have a motion to reconvene the work session? There's a motion and a second to reconvene the work session. All in favor? Anyone opposed? And the work session is back in session at 12:07 p.m. May we have a motion to retire into executive session? There's a motion and a second to retire into executive session. All in favor? Anyone opposed? And the City Council of the City of El Paso may retire into executive session pursuant to Section 3.5A of the El Paso City Charter and the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D, to discuss any of the following. Executive session, item 1, ex parte, City of El Paso, Supreme Court of Texas, case number 19-0022, matter number 17-1001-171.002 under 551.071. Executive session, item 2, City of El Paso versus Max Grossman, 8th Court of Appeals, case number 08-19-00277-CV, matter number 19-1001-259 under 551.071. And executive session item 3, Max Grossman versus City of El Paso, 8th Court of Appeals, case number 08-19-00272-CV, matter number 17-1001-171.001.001 under 551.071. These matters are taken into executive session under consultation with attorney. It is 12:08 p.m.
All right, let's reconvene.
Do we have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second to come out of executive session. All in favor? Anyone opposed? And the meeting is back in session at 12:15 p.m. Are there any motions on EX1 through EX3?
There's no action.
Thank you. May we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second?
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? Anyone
Yes.
opposed? And the work session for Monday, December 9th, 2019 is adjourned at 12:16 p.m.